to the warning track, back at the wall. It's out of here! Murphy wins the game for New York with a 2-run homer. And the Mets win it 4-2.
Trust all those guys, and today was a perfect example of not having JoJo and Kittredge and Helsley and still being able to take a game into extra innings with, the score being what it was. It's impressive. Those guys have done a really nice job, and Libby should be proud of his day. I know they walked it off, but 3 innings of really good work.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that's what it sounded like via SNY in New York, and also Bally Sports Midwest. Ollie Marmol, the voice you just heard, talking about the Cardinals bullpen. Alex, I know they lost yesterday. Tough way to lose as well, being down to your last strike and basically snatching a loss at the jaws of victory is the way that one works.
I don't think that's fun. Ask Ron Washington and Nelson Cruz.
Yeah, it's not what you want. It's not what you want, to say the least. But the Cardinals win 2 out of 3 over the weekend. Generally played good baseball. I even think yesterday they played a really good game. Now, Wilson Contreras, got to remember how many outs there are, but otherwise, a good game played all around by everybody involved. I left the weekend feeling more optimistic about the Cardinals than I have probably at any point so far this year. T-Bone mentioned this during our pre-show meeting. Paul Goldschmidt looking more like himself again. Your bullpen is lights out, dude. Yesterday, you have none of your top 3 relievers available. Imagine any of the last 3 years. What we would have been thinking on a day in which you do not have your best starter on the mound and you have none of your 3 best relievers available to you. Scheduled loss. Guaranteed, no doubt about it. Scheduled loss. I expect at least 6 runs to be given up through 9 innings, much less if you get to extras. It's not how it felt yesterday. Yesterday, you had at least some confidence that those guys that they're going to go to in the bullpen would find a way to get the job done. So kudos to them for even extending that thing until the 11th inning. Offense got to be better. Totally agree with that. We'll get to it. But, Alex, right now, one of the biggest advantages that the Cardinals have is that they have the 3rd best ERA among all National League teams in your bullpen. That has become a real weapon for the Cardinals.
It has, and I forgot if I was reading it on the Post-Dispatch, but, the 3 guys that you have locking things down, it's to the point where they step on the mound, and I don't care what's going to happen because you know they're locking it down. And now you're starting to see some depth to that bullpen. And both categories were a problem last year for the Cardinals. But even if you could squint and see Ryan Helsley at his best was one of your lockdown guys, and for a small portion of time Giovanni Gallegos was, you had no depth. Now we're talking about having the 4th, the 5th, the 6th option in that bullpen that you can look at and say, okay, if I've got a 1-run game, we're good. We're content. And that's something that, look, for a team that doesn't have their offense right now, for a team that is getting some really good pitching from their starters, but let's be all honest, it's very skittish when they're playing those games. It's nice to have something to look at and you say, yeah, but if we get to the 6th inning, we know that this game's going to be locked down for the Cardinals. And I got to be honest, it's the most exciting part for me, watching that element of the game, knowing that you have a 7th, 8th, 9th inning guy that in a crunch and an ability to win a series, you know you're in a good position to win.
Yeah, and I said this last week, this feels like a playoff caliber bullpen. And I know it's early, I know it's April, and hell, they got to get to the playoffs to be able to utilize it. But it feels like that. And to your point on those bullpen arms, man, if they get through the 6th inning, and on a day, not yesterday because they weren't available, but today, for example, if we get to the 7th inning today, guys, and the Cardinals have a 2-1 lead, I know they're going to win.
Good. Yeah.
I know they're going to win because the bullpen of JoJo, Kittredge, and Helsley are going to lock it down. I also feel good about the guys that are going to bridge to them, and Fernandez, who looked awesome.
Dude, he's
Liberatore
good.
looks really good.
good.
Even though he did give up a walk-off home run, he still looks really good coming out of the bullpen. And if I said Giovanni Gallegos was your 6th best arm right now out of the pen, that's a win.
Last year he was your 3rd best.
Yeah, and at times your second and best.
He was closing games out for a period of time for you last season. Now they had to go away from it because it went
didn't work.
incredibly poorly. But yeah, he was a guy that you were leaning on in serious high leverage situations when everybody was available. This year you have an A team where you're, get through 6 innings with our starters. We're going 7, 8, 9. These 3 guys. It's JoJo, it's Kittredge, it's Helsley. In their B game yesterday, you knew what the lineup was going to look like, and you had some amount of confidence that you could find a way to win that game, and they nearly did it, dude. If the offense comes through in any meaningful way, you win that game yesterday.
Yeah.
And that is really damn impressive. Coming off of a season where we were all dreading getting to the 7th. We're all like, oh, bleep, Helsley's not available today. What are they going to do? Or Hicks isn't figuring this thing out yet. What are they going to do? This year it's the opposite.
Last year, every time you would go to the 7th inning, that was when it was must-watch baseball because you're like, oh, how are they going to blow this game? Jordan Hicks throwing the ball into the freaking stands, Gallegos blowing up in the late portion of the season, Helsley being unavailable. It was must-watch television from 7th, 8th on because of that.
And I don't think you could speak to how comfortable a feeling it must be as A, Ollie Marmol, who had to go through that last year, and B, the players on the field when you get into these situations.
How about your pitcher?
If you're leading in a game going into the 7th or even the 6th, because Lance Lynn's more of a 5 and dive guy anyway, and they bring out a Fernandez or a Liberatore, and then you do get to those 3 high leverage arms, you can tell there's this ease of, okay, we know what we're getting. We know we're going to get these shutdown arms, and we make a couple of good plays, we're going to be fine. We've got a lead. We can win this ball game. Unlike last year where it was like they'd go to the bullpen and you go, oh God, what are we getting today? We could have like Jordan Hicks who's lights out, or we could have Jordan Hicks who walks the world and then gives up 5. And to your point, you enjoy watching how they blow up in the 7th inning. It's just totally different.
It's got to be mentally rewarding to those starting pitchers too, because last year it was I walk off the mound in the 5th inning and I pitch at least a decent game compared to what we've done earlier in the season, and knowing that this game is going to get blown up. To where now Lance Lynn walks off the mound, and look, I'm sure he would have liked to go an extra 1 or 2 innings, but pitched well against the Mets in a pitcher's duel. You walk off the mound, you're thinking, man, I'm good. We're good. I did my job. They're going to do their job. Let's just hope the offense comes through.
All right. You guys want some numbers on Helsley, Kittredge, Romero, and Fernandez, your top 4 relievers right now? Those 4 combined have thrown 52 innings so far this year for the Cardinals. 52 innings between those 4 pitchers. They have allowed 35 hits. They have 61 strikeouts. They have 11 walks. 61 to 11 strikeout to walk ratio. They have allowed a total, again, 52 innings of 9 earned runs on the season. That is good for a 1.5 ERA.
Hot damn.
That's your top 4 relievers this year. I have not gone back into the numbers just yet. If I did their top 4 relievers in terms of the usage from a year ago, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they probably didn't have a 6-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, and they probably did not allow roughly 1 earned run per game. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I don't think that was the case in the month of April with what they were trying to accomplish in the back end of games. It's totally different this year, and we'll get into this later on today. What is the biggest thing? Because we are now officially exactly 1 month into the baseball season. Biggest thing that you've learned about the Cardinals in 2024, for me, is that they could find a way to weaponize their bullpen. They've been looking for a way to do that for like 2 years now. Ollie had a couple of moments in 2022 where it felt like things were kind of coming into place, but it was mostly the young guys that had come up from Memphis where he's like, okay, I can utilize Zach Thompson in this way. Hey, if Liberatore is not going to be a starter for us, we can use him in the bullpen. And then at that point they had Gio, good version of Gio. Helsley kind of figured it out. So they had a few different pieces that you could utilize, but there was no depth there really. It was just like 3, maybe 4 guys on any given day. You legitimately, when everybody's healthy, go 6 deep, maybe 7 deep in this bullpen. They don't even have their prized free agent possession that they got this offseason.
You don't even have Middleton.
They gave Keenan Middleton a multi-year contract because they thought he was going to be such a good reliever at the back end of the pen for him. He has not thrown a pitch for them yet this year, and they have this. It's pretty damn good, man. Still a lot to get done that is going to improve this team, but the bullpen is not something you have to worry about, which means it's officially time, ladies and gentlemen.
A lineup game?
For the first time in the 2024 season, after seeing games played, more than a series, we are updating our 2024 Cardinals bullpen circle of trust.
Oh!
Who do you trust? Who do you trust? Tell me who do you trust? It's the Cardinals Circle of Trust with BK and Ferrario.
You ready, brother?
All right, oh yeah, brother. Circle of Trust-mania is going wild today. I'd like to invite in Keenan Middleton.
Okay, stop it. The last time we did this, it was March 28th. We are
a month.
Almost exactly 1 month in.
Should have did it yesterday.
We had Ryan Helsley. Everybody agree? Keep him in?
No.
Need
Trash.
to get him out of there. We had Andrew Kittredge. We saw him throw like 2 innings.
Didn't care.
Get the
Put him
softball pitcher in there.
That's because we saw how crap it was last year. We were like, put him in, please.
That guy throws like it's a beer league softball game. I need him as a part of my bullpen. Go ahead and put him in. We had JoJo Romero. We agree? Keep him in?
Yep.
Man, we were really good at
I was
this.
going to say, so we don't really need to update then. We're good.
That was the bullpen.
BK
Circle of
tried to
Trust.
put Riley O'Brien in, and we shut that one down.
To be fair,
Because he almost
blew up
took a
2
guy's
days
head
later.
off 3 times.
Alex, I will let you begin. Do you have a new nominee for the Cardinals bullpen Circle of Trust?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not going to go with the obvious one here. I'm going to let you guys bring up the obvious one. I'm going to throw one in that I was hoping would throw you a little bit of curveball. I nominate Matthew Liberatore. I know he blew it up yesterday. Probably horrible timing to nominate him.
No, I actually think that he had a great outing yesterday.
I think he's had
Forget the result. He was awesome yesterday,
I think
dude.
he's had a great season, to be honest with you. Now that he's leaned into this role, I mean, look, the walks aren't pretty with 8 of them and 14 in a third, but the strikeout stuff is there, and you saw him in a high-leverage situation yesterday, and other than that last inning when you were milking it as much as you could, he kept you in that ball game. So I'm going to put Matthew Liberatore in this. I don't think he's like at the top tier, but I do trust Liberatore now compared to what it was last season.
He was going to be my nominee.
Oh, wow.
So I'm 100% with you.
I thought you guys were going to go Fernandez.
So, yeah, we'll get there. Matthew
trying to be the smart
Liberatore,
one.
what he did yesterday showed me something, man. That took gumption. To be able to get through 3 innings and to keep extending the game, getting through big-time jams now. An assist came multiple times from Mason Wynn, who's unbelievable. I love that guy. I love watching Mason Wynn play baseball. But he got the ground ball that he needed. And how many times do they say over the past couple of seasons, listen, Andre Palante got the ground ball that he was looking for, and it just got through the infield. Well, Liberatore got him. It didn't get through the infield. I know process versus results. I'm playing both here a little bit. Matthew Liberatore is deserving of being in our bullpen Circle of Trust. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I'm in 100%. One thing I do want to see is a little bit more strikeout stuff because I do think he still has a little bit more, but he has pitched well. And I know what you brought up about maybe not being the best timing. Look, man, if he gave you 3 innings yesterday, you know who that's on? That's on the offense for not giving him more run support. So, yeah, I'm 100% with you guys. He belongs in the Circle of Trust. Matthew Liberatore, send us your shirt size because you're getting a Circle of Trust t-shirt.
Baby.
I would also add this. Him giving you 3 innings saved you for today.
Yeah.
Now, like, if things go wrong today and you don't want to utilize your 3 high leverage relievers that you want to go to tomorrow, probably, you can go to John King in that spot. You can go to, who else did they not use yesterday? They had one other guy. Nick Robertson today.
To be fair, I totally forgot
put
John
Nick
King was
Robertson
still
in?
here.
You could get 4 innings combined out of those 2 pitchers and just eat the innings today because of what Liberatore was able to give you yesterday. So, Andy, you went to one of those guys, you were losing. So I thought Ollie played it perfectly, and I thought Liberatore was great. T-Bone, you got another one you'd like to nominate?
Well, the only other one I think that belongs in the Circle of Trust, you were going to nominate him.
Crap.
Oh, God.
He's going to put somebody else in.
Ryan Fernandez will be my nominee.
Yeah. I'm
nothing else.
Yeah,
Dude, hey, if you didn't watch yesterday,
Yeah,
I'm
seriously.
sorry, but that's all I need to
His
say.
walk to strikeout ratio is 15-4.
One of my favorite things in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the way that they nominate guys is they're all in this room, right? All the voters are in this room, and somebody will present a case for somebody. And so the selection committee, they'll have somebody stand up, and they say, next up, we're going to nominate Brian Urlacher. So-and-so, would you please state his case? And they give like 100 stats and explain his story and all these different things. And there are certain players that when you stand up, there's nothing more that needs to be said. They'll just say, hey, Tanner Hendrickson, can you please state the case for, John Elway, Jerry Rice. Stand up.
It's John Bleeping Elway.
John Elway, Jerry Rice, and then you sit right back down. And that's how I feel about Ryan Fernandez in the Circle of Trust right now.
Oh, good. So we got John Elway and Jerry Rice right now. Man, that's where we have come.
Yeah, he's in. This guy's good, man. I don't know what more needs to be said. They found something in Ryan Fernandez, and I have no idea. Like, we know how this works with bullpen arms. This could crash and burn next week, and it wouldn't surprise anybody. But hot damn, it looks
Riley
good right
O'Brien.
now. He got you through a month. That's more than I was expecting when they got him in the Rule 5 draft. Good on Mo, man. Good on Mo.
Sweep it.
Go ahead. You idiot. Who else you putting in this one?
Yeah, I got nothing else.
Okay, good.
By the way, did we not put Gio in the beginning of the year?
It's because he didn't look good in spring training either.
You know what's crazy?
Good on
His
us.
strikeout rate is unbelievable.
Yeah, I feel no confidence at all.
It's actually right there with Fernandez.
When they make contact, it goes so far.
Giving up 3 home runs.
So far. It reminds me a little bit of what we saw from Drew Verhagen, where Drew Verhagen was either getting strikeouts or the ball was going out of the yard, and there was no in between.
Really glad we revamped the bullpen.
I mean, he's given up 9 hits, and a third of his hits have been home runs.
They hit it really hard. And that started last year. They felt like maybe they could tweak a couple of things, fiddle those knobs, and things would work out, and it has not.
No
worked
knob
out.
fiddle in there.
All right, so our new Cardinals bullpen circle of trust: Ryan Helsley, Andrew Kittredge, JoJo Romero, and Matthew Liberatore. And we threw one more in because you need 5 guys in the bullpen circle of trust at this point in the season. Ryan Fernandez. Did we ever have 5 players in the
Well,
Cardinal circle of trust
you
last
used to
year?
get pretty hot and bothered. You used to get pretty hot and bothered with the circle of trust. You'd throw everybody in.
Yeah, but you guys had to vote for him. We had to get at least 2 out of 3.
Yeah, but T-Bone would start voting people in too. So
I thought we were going to nominate Nick Robertson already, but
no, man,
guess it was just me.
he hasn't even hit our threshold. He's pitched 2 innings.
probably by the end of 22, maybe.
Yeah.
You would have had Hicks, Gallegos, Helsley, Stratton. Maybe not. Thompson may have fell into that. I just remember we always had. I remember the first circle of trust had Tyler Webb in it.
Oh yeah, that was when BK was like, ooh.
The good old days.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can always watch us on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. That's where the graveyard chat is off and running this morning. We have had a couple of texts. I get it. They lost yesterday, guys. Can you talk about the offense? They stink. Fair. Is the offense going to get back on track before we see some slippage in the pitching? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Shows bunt, lays it down. Here comes Mason. He's going to score. Ball drop, and Ciani drives home the first run. They dared him to bunt. He did it anyway, and the Cardinals take advantage. Love it.
I haven't seen a guy in the league that lays down the bunt as well as Ciani does.
That's what it sounded like over the weekend. The Cardinals get the squeeze as Michael Ciani, hell of a situational hitter, if you're okay with making productive outs. Turns out those productive outs sometimes turn into runs.
Easy with the analytics.
And those runs end up being meaningful for the St. Louis Cardinals. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK.
Not have been too meaningful. They lost the game.
It wasn't an unproductive out. He didn't get thrown out.
Yeah.
But they did have some productive outs over the weekend. You know how I know that? Because they scored runs, and they aren't doing that with anything other than productive outs for the most part right now. And this is where things get a little dicey. We were a little bit of happy talk in the open today because they won 2 out of 3. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. The Cardinals are playing better baseball right now than they had for the majority of the season. They have tied with the White Sox the fewest home runs in Major League Baseball. They have 18 so far this season. And yet, they're right around 500, Alex. So the offense has been awful, the thing that we thought was going to have to carry the team, and they're still right around 500. Defense has been pretty good for most of the year. Yesterday, Wilson Contreras, weird base running moment. But even in that game, Donovan with a smart base running move where he gets put into the rundown. It felt weird at the time, but then you look at it, you're like, okay, he's pulling the throw to second base so that way the runner can score. He's conceding himself to get the run in. Smart move by Brendan Donovan. Base running been solid so far this year. You've seen the pitching has been much better. We just talked about the bullpen. They've got all of this other stuff that's propping them up while the offense is trying to find its sea legs. Alex, what is your level of confidence right now that will happen? That we will see this offense, even if you don't think it's going to be top 5, it'll get back on track in a way where you look at it, you're like, okay, at worst, it's average.
Like a 5? Like I'm stuck in the middle with this team. I find myself every single game going, okay, it's going to break through because it can't be this bad all season long. But I also ask myself, how long do we keep saying that before we just turn the note towards, hey, this just might not be that good of an offense? I mean, again, with the exception of that one game against the Mets, we're talking about 4 runs or less being scored, which has been a trend for this team. So I'm not to the point where I'm sitting here saying, like, this team is going to be awful all season long and have to rely on all 5 starting pitchers to be Cy Young worthy to get this team into the playoffs. But I'm also not going to sit here and act like there's not concerning trends of this team in terms of the offense is just going to turn around all of a sudden and just kickstart and become one of the best in baseball. I'm really stuck in the middle. But even with that skepticism of the offense, I mean, I am fairly pleased with what we saw over the weekend because to me that's a New York Mets team that's in the same level as you, and even if your offense isn't finding ways to dominate the competition, you're still finding ways to win. I also watch the game and sit there and say to myself, this can't sustain all season long. It's gonna fall off sooner or later, and when is that going to happen? Your hope is the offense figures something out before the pitching really falls apart.
So what do we think is going to fall apart with the pitching? Like, where are we concerned? Because I look at some of the ERAs, I'm not sure that I agree that this pitching staff is pitching at an unsustainable rate right now. Sonny Gray's not going to have a 1 ERA, but
the concern is the next 3 pitchers you're about to see. Matz, Gibson.
Matz so far has a 5.5 ERA.
Yeah.
Gibson has a 4.4 ERA. Michaelis has a 5.9 ERA. And you think it's going to get worse?
I feel like for 2 of those guys, yeah.
Who? Which ones?
With Matz and Gibson.
You think Matz is going to finish with a worse than a 5.5 ERA this year?
I'm kind of concerned about it, yes, because every time those 3 take the mound, I look at it and I say I'm waiting for the one blow-up inning to take place. I felt like I was saying that with Lance Lynn 2 weeks ago, and Lance has figured out finding ways to navigate through it. Sonny Gray, we all know. That's the stopper we all talked about. The next 3 you're about to see, it would not surprise me if you lose this series against Detroit because of 2 of those 3 guys not having the ability to pitch to the same level of competition as Lance Lynn and Sonny Gray have.
I think what we're seeing in action right now is what the Cardinals are hoping for going into the season. This is what they were selling us on, is the idea that, guys, we don't need our pitching to be dominant. We just need them to be consistent. We need to know it when we go into a game, what we should be expecting out of them. And right now, put Steven Matz to the side for a second, because I think there's a real conversation, Alex, to your point, to be had with him. But when Michaelis, Gibson, Lynn, and Gray go out there for a start, I feel like you kind of have an idea of what they're going to be on any given day. Now, the results might change, right? One day, Lance Lynn goes out there into the point of the fast lane. He gets into a bar fight in the first inning, and he gets out of it. And he's sitting there drinking his, I would assume, old-fashioned, probably. Feels like a
Mai Tai.
For Lance Lynn, you think Lance Lynn's
Sex
out
on
there
the beach kind of drink.
You think that's what Lance Lynn's drinking?
He catches you all off guard.
Chance.
I was thinking maybe he had a pour of, like, I don't know, some kind of tequila. No. We were going in that direction.
Mai Tai, hold the liquor.
I feel like
You know what?
he's
He's a Bush Heavy guy. He's probably not getting...
What'd you mean by that?
You know what I mean. He's getting a Bush Heavy while he's sitting there at the bar.
I don't know,
He's getting
man.
the tall pour as well.
I don't know, man.
Right, next
Bloody
time I'm at
Mary,
the ballpark,
virgin.
I'm talking to Lynn.
I know. He's getting the camo can Bush Light.
Oh,
That's
for
what he's
sure.
going with.
Virgin strawberry
That's
daiquiri.
an Illinois thing right there.
And
he
he's
lives
just
in
sitting
Illinois.
there having his camo can Bush Light after he got into the bar fight, just enjoying himself. And then the next time he gets into the bar fight, he gets punched in the face a few times, and he ends up going home with a pack of iced peas on his face because he's got to recover.
Haven't been in many bar fights, have you, BK?
What do you mean?
Me neither, man.
What do you mean?
Gets to a bar fight, punched, and goes home with a bag of peas on his head. Okay.
We'll gave it away. The results will change when he's out there, but he's pretty much the same guy no matter what. So if there's one guy that I am worried a bit about in terms of the ERA coming up, it's Lance Lynn. I don't think he's a 2.6 ERA guy at this point in his career. But Gibson, like 4.5, yeah, I think that's about right. Michaelis 5.9, I would expect that, in fact, to get a lot better as we continue along. Not to mid-threes, but I don't think he's going to be a 5.9 ERA guy this year. And then there's Steven Matz, who, like, he's your swing guy right now. I think eventually it's possibly gets replaced in the rotation. I'm not all that worried about your rotation falling apart. This is, I think, what the Cardinals were hoping to build during the offseason. It's not great, but at least you know what you're getting on a day-in, day-out basis. And then it goes back to the offense, which is, can they support that? Can they get enough offensively to get more out of them? And I think that comes down to the home run ball. Are they going to start hitting more home runs? And if you believe the answer to that is no, this team's screwed.
Yeah.
You can't sustain this way. But I think the answer is yes. And so my confidence level on, like, can you win with this offense? I think it's like a 7, 8 maybe. This is a 90-win team, baby.
That is very optimistic because I'm at like a...
Does that surprise anybody?
No, because I'm with Alex. I'm at a 5, and the main concern for me is the power from two guys, and that's Goldie and Arenado. Now, Goldie has looked better, and when he has looked better, he's slugging the ball. But guys, Arenado's slugging percentage right now is sitting at 355. When you look at
great.
Paul Goldschmidt, it's at 287. Like, this team will not hit home runs if those two don't hit home runs.
But do you think they're not going to?
I mean, I'm a little concerned about the power from Arenado and Goldie. Now, when I say power, what are you talking about? Because do I think they can get to 20 homers? Sure. Can they get to 30? I don't know.
I'm concerned about a lot of...
I think they got to be 30 home run guys. I think for this offense to be able to carry
you
this
need them to be your
pitching
two
staff-
best players.
Exactly. I think Goldie and Arenado have got to be 30 home run guys because Arenado's going to be a swing guy to where he could hit 40 or he could hit like 25 because he strikes out and goes through one of those down years just like Kyle Schwarber does. So I think the two guys, and it's been the talk all season long, is Goldie and Arenado. Do they become 30 homer guys? That's the question. Do you believe in that? I'm skeptical of that because they look like their age is starting to show the lack of power.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could hit 25 each, and then if you get Jordan Walker back and he hits 20 this year, you're feeling pretty good about it.
20 for Jordan Walker?
Yeah.
The Cardinals broke him, man.
Right?
He hit 16 last year in 117 games.
Yeah, the Cardinals broke him even more than what they broke him last
year.
year.
117 games again.
Come on, man.
I think this offense is going to be fine.
He sounds like what I sound like 2 years ago with the Blues. Like, guys, defense is going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
Backdoor tappage? Who cares?
Yeah, it's going to be fine, man. They're going to figure this out. And then we're going to watch the blow up from two of the next three starting pitchers, where it's 8-0 in the third inning.
It's going to get warmer outside in this offense. You're going to see it. It's going to be, remember the 2 explosives. We're going to see that. Except it's going to be missiles off the bats of Goldie and Arenado.
I'll tell you what, buddy, when that happens, I will celebrate with you.
We're gonna play this back. Remember, 11:35. We're way off clock on April 29th, 2024. That was when BK said, "Pew pew pew pew."
Now, what I'm going to remember is him going, 25 home runs.
Jordan Walker's going to come back and hit 20 home runs.
Let's pretend that Goldie and Arenado power should be 20.
I think they're going to hit 25 apiece. Do you
They
guys
need 30.
Do you guys disagree? Do you think that if I set the over under on Goldie and Arenado 25 home runs this year, each of them, you would
I'd
take the under?
I would go
Well, that's
over,
a
but I don't
problem.
think they're at 30. That's
What'd you say?
That's a problem.
Yeah.
If it's under 25 home runs,
I
history.
know it's a problem. That's why I'm not sitting over here going, explosions.
NFL
I'm going to watch the
cricketers
pew,
is
pew,
next.
pew come off the pitcher's arm.
Terry Hedges here with the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals fell to the Mets yesterday as they take 2-3 from New York. They start a 3-game set at the Tigers tonight. 5:40 will be first pitch. Steven Matz on the mound for St. Louis. Kenta Maeda will get the start for Detroit. This Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's a big weekend in the NFL as they finished up the NFL draft. Alex, how much of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round did you watch?
I didn't even watch the second round, man. I got updates on the second round. That was it.
The NFL ratings were in yesterday from day 3 of the NFL draft. It would have been the most watched regular season game in baseball last year. Day 3 of the NFL draft would have been the most watched regular season baseball
you people
game.
need hobbies.
Either that or baseball really needs help.
I barely watched day 3, and I love the NFL draft. It's like a holiday.
People need help,
Nobody watches the draft beyond the first round.
We need hobbies.
Apparently, hundreds of thousands of people apparently do.
There's
On a
hundreds of thousands of people that need a hobby.
I don't need to find out who the depth tackle that was taken in my 6th round of the draft.
To pretend that Spencer Rattler's a good quarterback when he got
Should we go
drafted
check
on
with
day
Donnie
3.
how the Bills did the rest of the draft? I'll check with him tomorrow when we do our podcast.
All right. Let's start with those rookie
That
quarterbacks.
wide right moment again.
6 of them went in the top 12. And then the next one went like 700 picks later. Don't check the math on that, but I feel like that's roughly correct.
Pew, pew.
Alex, how many rookie quarterbacks do you believe will be starting in week 1 of the NFL season? 6 in the top 12. Rattler ended up going later on, but
3. Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy.
no Drake May.
I don't think Drake May starts. I think if you're the Patriots, no need to break him like you broke Mac Jones. Take your time with it. Let the backup that you sign in the offseason or whoever you got on your team, let him play and let Drake May look at it next year.
Did you say Michael Penix Jr.? Mm-hmm. You think he's getting the job over Kirk?
Yeah.
No, he just forgot about Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
No, I do. I think he'll start over
it's
Kirk.
a safe space if you want to admit that here.
Yeah, for some reason, I still thought he was picked by the Raiders.
We know.
2.
I mean, that would have made sense, unlike what the hell Atlanta did.
I forgot.
By the way, they needed a corner. They didn't draft a corner, and they said, we didn't want to reach.
I absolutely forgot about Kirk.
I feel like 3 would have still been your answer because Bo Nix.
No, I don't even think the Denver Broncos can start Bo Nix.
They said afterwards the reason why they picked Bo Nix is because they believe he's the most pro-ready, which I do believe, by the way. He's like 35
Out of
years
all
old.
the quarterbacks?
I think that's probably true.
Over Caleb Williams, he's the most pro-ready.
Yeah, I think Caleb's going to have some moments this year where it looks ugly.
He probably holds onto the ball a little too long for a pro quarterback.
Everything's a home run for him.
Yeah.
Like, I think Caleb Williams will be the most exciting and overall best rookie quarterback.
Well, I think Bo Nix is going to be better than J.J. McCarthy, so I'm with you there.
Sure. I think Bo Nix is going to immediately be the best version of himself. Like, whatever you see this year from Bo Nix in the NFL, I think that's pretty much what he's going to be. I think Caleb Williams is going to be pretty good this year, and then like 5 years from now has a chance to be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. So that'd be the difference. Like the gap between where they're going to be now and where they will be in the future is,
Raiders.
smaller.
Why didn't you just select Penix Jr.?
Would have been a lot of fun. I think I'll go Caleb Williams starts, Jaden Daniels starts. I believe Drake May will end up starting on week 1. I think Bo Nix will be starting week 1. I think it's going to take 4 weeks before J.J. McCarthy starts. So I'll go 4 of those top 6 quarterbacks are starting week 1.
I forgot Jaden Daniels, too. Can we do this again?
Come on, dude.
I know.
I'd say 3 as well. I think Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix. I'm not 100% on Drake May, but I could totally hear the argument for he ends up starting. I think they're going to play it safe, though, because they realize they don't have a good roster, and they'll throw Jacoby Brissett to the side to get drilled against the defensive team.
So we just talked about the teams that did address their quarterback situation. For better or worse, who did you leave the draft, Alex, saying to yourself, man, I have no idea what they're going to do at the quarterback position? Who are the teams left in the worst position right now at quarterback heading into the 2024 season?
I mean, I think it's the Raiders, right? I mean, that's the team that needed to get something out of it, and they got absolutely nothing for their team. Even drafting something late to see, like, hey, maybe we could get like a diamond in the rough throughout this draft that just steps up. They got nothing from that. So I would say the Raiders.
Yeah, it's the Raiders for me. I think they're one of those teams that had to come out of this draft with a quarterback, and they did it. And now they've got to run it back with, they've got Aiden O'Connell on the roster, they've got Gardner Minshew. Man, those aren't long-term fixes, and we've talked about it, guys. Shedeur Sanders is the favorite to be the number 1 pick next year. That's not a great look for the NFL draft. So I think it's the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think they have a great plan in place for what the future holds for the position.
So that would be my top team as well. We're all in agreement there. But I think you could make a case that they're actually in a better position right now than the Browns or the Giants. Because at least the Raiders go into this season knowing it's a transition year. Like they have nobody on their roster that is stuck there for the foreseeable future because of a contract situation, or that they're hoping will be good and they don't know the answer yet. For example, the Dolphins. I think Tua maybe could be that guy, but are you really willing to pay him $40 million a year? Because that's what it's going to cost, and it sounds like they're willing to. I don't love that idea. And a team that made that mistake very recently is the New York Giants. I think they're going to look back on this draft and regret not taking a quarterback. I think they're going to regret not taking one of Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix. And most likely, Michael Penix Jr. They should have been the team that did it.
Especially if Penix Jr. is going to be as big as they're making him out to be. Yeah, you really screwed up not drafting that quarterback.
Another team, and they didn't have a way to address this, and they shouldn't have because they are truly stuck, is the Cleveland Browns.
I thought you were going to say the Dallas Cowboys.
I think the Cleveland, that you could go with them as well. I think the Cleveland Browns are in a really bad situation right now. Deshaun Watson still is not 100% with a shoulder issue that he's been dealing with now for, 2 years. And he's not been good when he's been on the field. He's been outplayed by his backup each of the last 2 seasons. They've been a better team without Deshaun Watson on the football field. So that would be the one that I would go with. Final thing quarterback-wise, Alex. We talked about it after the first round. 6 of the top 12 picks were quarterbacks. Part of why that might be the case is because of next year's quarterback class. Over on some of the gambling sites, they have the odds for the first overall pick in 2025 already. Shedeur Sanders is the leading contender right now, quarterback at Colorado. Carson Beck, you guys remember watching him at Georgia? Basically J.J. McCarthy of the South. That's Carson Beck.
And that wasn't fun.
Quinn Ewers, who I think should be replaced. Ooh. He's not a good quarterback at Texas. He's third right now. Jalen Milroe, the quarterback at Alabama, who was literally benched last year. Yeah. He's in these odds. Jackson Dart, who was benched at USC, ended up doing pretty well last year at Ole Miss. He's on this list. Cam Ward, who I don't know if he's even a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. Oh. He used to be at Houston, now at Miami. He's on this list as well. Those are the quarterbacks most likely to go number 1 overall. Do you guys think any of those are NFL starters?
Maybe Sanders, but I don't think that. I would not bank on that being like my franchise guy that I'm going to be drafting. Honestly, if I'm a team, I'm opting out of the quarterback draft next year. I was looking up to see what the free agent class is next season. You've got Dak and Jared Goff. I would say one of those two are better than any of these quarterbacks you're going to draft.
Totally agree.
100%. I don't think there's a starter in there. I think any of those guys that you would draft, and Sanders probably the best one. Maybe I'd hear an argument on Beck if you wanted to. Those are guys that you draft and you have to sit them, almost like J.J. McCarthy. Can he be an NFL quarterback? Maybe, but he probably needs a year or two to just sit in the wing, wait, develop. That's why I think these teams that missed out, like the Raiders, the Giants, to your point, like you had to get a quarterback this year. And typically I don't say that. You had to do it this year because maybe Dak and Goff become available, but only 2 teams are going to win those bidding wars for those guys. That's a terrible quarterback class that is going to be available next year. I think you're going to see a non-quarterback be drafted number 1 overall.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, go back and look at Carson Beck's numbers. Tell me he's J.J. McCarthy. All right, cool. I would be happy to.
Oh, God, what'd you do, man? So this past
season, J.J. McCarthy completed 72% of his passes. Do you know what percentage of Carson Beck's passes were completed? 72% for J.J. McCarthy.
72%?
Yep, 72% for
I know this game.
Carson Beck. Last year, J.J. McCarthy averaged 9 yards per attempt. Carson Beck was at 9.5. Last year, J.J. McCarthy had 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Carson Beck, 24 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He was J.J. McCarthy. Really good supporting cast on a very good football team that primarily runs the football. That was it. That was him. And by the way, he's actually the same age as J.J. McCarthy right now. So if Beck entered this year's class, he would have been essentially at the same spot of his career, his trajectory as J.J. McCarthy was heading into this season. So, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable in saying that he will be next year's version of J.J. McCarthy, where you're going to go into the draft, everybody's going to wonder why he's going top 5, and he's probably going to go top 5. I'm not telling you he's not, but I think it's a mistake for whoever does it.
The Raiders are going to draft Sanders next year. Bank on that.
I don't know if his dad's going to want him to play there.
Why, man? Vegas, baby.
I don't know, because Dion's come out and said, like, oh, they're not going to go play in certain markets. Okay, tough guy. Okay.
Going to play wherever you're damn drafted.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything else that stood out to you after day 1 of the NFL draft?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you watched and you were like, that was really important? Or
Detroit
really
crushed it. Detroit is Detroit and Houston, I've made it very clear, are my 2 favorite teams this upcoming season. Detroit crushed it. T-Bone said that they needed help on defense secondary because he could catch a pass against that defense. Well, take Arnold and Rakestraw Jr.
Yep.
That is an awesome addition to that team. So they crushed it, in my opinion.
I felt the same way about Philadelphia.
Yeah, they had a good one.
Getting Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Unbelievable haul. They really needed defensive backs, and they got both of them. And then I am a sucker for these kinds of stories. Jeremiah Trotter, former linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles. His son is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He was selected by them on day 3 of the draft as well, which is just a super fun storyline.
Yeah, I loved what Detroit did in the draft as well. They were the team for me that crushed it. In Chicago, like, I know they had the number 1 pick. How often, though, is it that you see that a team with the number 1 pick still ends up having a really solid draft throughout? And I thought the Bears did that as well. I think they're the team they're going to be the team that's going to have the biggest surprise, I think, in the season. I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year, of course. I don't think they're going to be like win the NFC North. I think they're probably a playoff team, though, and I think that's going to surprise some people.
I think they're better than Minnesota.
Like that. He's Tanner Hendrickson. That's Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Rhino Shield. Look, when it comes to the exterior of your home, especially with all this rain that we've gotten over the weekend, if you're not using the right product, then that paint is going to wash away. Maybe you painted it yourself at the beginning of spring and said, I'm just going to save money and do it this way. Well, you're going to be painting it again because it does not withstand the elements like Rhino Shield does. Darren and his team use a certain type of system. It's a 2 to 3 coating process, and it cures 8 to 10 times thicker than any other paint that you're going to buy from the hardware store. And whatever type of siding you have, their product sticks to it. And let me tell you, it sticks well. I have brick at my home, and they painted it 3 years ago. It looks brand new today. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. So when it comes to your home, update the exterior of it. Make it look brand new by using Rhino Shield. Give Darren a call today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you, and get the coating of a Rhino on the exterior of your home. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for questions and answers. Alex, let's start with this. Do you guys have an opinion on the Stanley Cup, who you believe will win based on what you've seen so far in the postseason?
Not the Toronto Maple Leafs, am I right, guys?
Dude, did you just see that apparently Austin Matthews is expected to miss Game 5?
Yeah, his tum-tum hurts. He's probably just given up after the last game.
That's embarrassing, man. I don't know how you do that.
We'll get to that later because I just think that is just a complete joke right now. I'm going to stick with the team that I backed at the beginning of the playoffs. It's the Carolina Hurricanes. They are so well built, and now Frederik Andersen is healthy, and they didn't use him a lot in the regular season, which is the problem that the Winnipeg Jets are suffering from right now. My team is the Carolina Hurricanes. I believe the Stanley Cup champion comes out of the Eastern Conference.
I'm going Florida. Florida was my team before. They're still my team now. I just think they have everything you need in order to win a Stanley Cup. Last year, they were right on the cusp. I think they did get it done this year.
Yeah, I like both Florida and Carolina. I really loved Carolina coming into it. One team that surprised me, I don't think they're going to win the Cup, but I think it does say something because we all just wrote them off. Vancouver is up 3-1 on Nashville now.
Dude,
and they're missing their starting goalie.
They're the third string.
They're on their third string goalie. And they're playing really well. And again, I don't think Nashville's a great team, but I thought for sure that they could beat Vancouver when they started dealing with goalie injuries. And Vancouver is just continuing to churn out and beat the Nashville Predators. They're up 3-1 and are probably going to get to the second round.
I'll be really interested because I think Edmonton has their way with Vancouver. And Edmonton, all Edmonton needs is a good goaltending. Stuart Skinner was awesome in that last series for them. I think Edmonton's going to be the team that comes out of the West, which is huge for them because, man, they needed a massive step. I don't think Colorado gets past Vegas. I'm surprised they're going to get past Winnipeg, but the Eastern Conference is, especially if Carolina can beat the Rangers, that's their juggernaut.
The Eastern Conference is going to be unbelievable. You've got Boston most likely, Carolina, and then the Rangers and Florida.
Yeah.
That's absurd. As a second round, those might be the 4 best teams in the NHL that remain.
Yeah.
And they're all going to be facing off against one another. So tough road to get there.
You're going to get Vancouver versus Vegas and Colorado versus Edmonton.
What do you guys think is the best case scenario for what the Stanley Cup final could be?
In terms of viewership, entertainment.
However you want to take that.
Edmonton versus the Rangers.
I was going to go with Edmonton because I think they need their superstar and McDavid to get to the Stanley Cup. Ideally, they'd love a Toronto comeback, but that's not going to happen.
I'd go Edmonton, Florida.
I was thinking Edmonton, Boston, but I can hear the argument on Florida as well. So, but I think Edmonton's the team out of the West that if Bettman were rooting for anybody, he's probably got his McDavid jersey on.
The only team they don't want to come out of the East is Carolina. From a viewership, entertainment perspective.
I'd agree with
Carolina might be the best team of all of those teams
kind of
we talked about.
I guess not anymore, but they were previously in recent years viewed as just that blah team that played that vanilla style of hockey that they hoped would win in the playoffs.
See, the funny thing is their style of hockey, in my opinion, is super entertaining. It is, let's get on offense as long as humanly possible and score as many goals out of that as possible. It's amazing.
There's no stopping their cycling game. That's why I love Rod Brindamore, because he has a system that, when you get into the offensive zone, you can't get the puck away from them.
All right, from the 314, what do you believe will be the name of the Utah Hockey Club, Alex?
I hope it's the Yetis. I think the Yetis are the one that grew on me over time. I really hope it's not like the Utah Storm or something like that.
What are they talking about, Blizzard?
Blizzard, that's what it sounds like, an East Coast Hockey League team name. So I hope they don't go that.
The Venom, the Fury,
don't do
Hockey
Venom.
Club.
Fury's stupid. Please don't do Hockey Club. I like Yetis. I think Yetis is the best one in terms of a logo, a mascot, the ability to kind of build it around that name.
The Ice, the Mammoth.
The Mammoth people are on board with. That one would be fun.
Yeah, Blizzard, I feel like they're sponsored by Dairy Queen. So I really don't want Blizzard. I really don't want Hockey Club.
I like the Yeti.
I do too.
I think they should be the Utah Yeti, though, not the Utah Yetis, not plural, just the Yeti.
I'd agree.
Well, if you do a Yeti, then you got to do the cooler.
Yeah, just like Seattle's not the
Stop
Kraken.
it. Get out of my head.
They've got to have the Yeti will be like the...
Oh, Yeti just going to sponsor them.
They've got to have the arena.
Yeah.
As a cooler.
It's got to be in the form of
with a retractable roof that opens up. God, that would be awesome.
Oh, the best endorsement opportunity in the history of sports.
And then when they get taken out of Salt Lake City, they just lift it up and take it to the next city.
Pick it up with the hand.
Yeah, that's what I was going after. You can roll it, just pick it up and bring it right back to Arizona.
Through the mountains, you're just rolling it over the top. The Yeti comes by. All right, here we go.
The Yeti cooler. And then when you got to take the ice out of it, you open up the roof, you let it melt, and you open up the little plug on the side, and the water will
All right,
sift
coming
out.
up in 15 minutes, we'll play a game of in or out. You give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. But next, what have you learned about the Cardinals in the first month of the season? What's the most important thing you've learned thus far? We'll give you our answer to that here from some of you coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Swing and a miss. Strike three. 102 on the fastball from Ryan Helsley to end it as the St. Louis Cardinals defeat the Mets tonight 4-2 in New York.
Ooh, that was romaine lettuce. That was crisp, Wayne. Wow.
That's what it sounded like on Apple TV as the Cardinals won on Friday night with Alex and T-Bone on BK. You got some thoughts on that?
I don't even think romaine lettuce is crisp.
Yeah,
I think
romaine is.
No, that's the iceberg lettuce. The iceberg lettuce is the crunch.
Yeah,
come on, man.
Got some crispness.
Know your lettuces, man.
Oh, yeah,
know your lettuces.
You think I don't
know your
lettuce?
No, you don't. You had chicken over the weekend. Don't be a phony.
It's one time.
I will out you every time because you say you're a vegetarian. I will out you.
Yeah, man, I said that in confidence.
Hey, there's nothing in confidence in this room.
I had African food yesterday. They had the wrap, it was spicy chicken. I was like, I can't.
Do you have lettuce on it?
Of course. Everything
What kind of
else
lettuce was it?
vegetarian.
What kind of lettuce was it?
Romaine. It
Yeah,
was
one
crisp.
crunchy wasn't.
All right. So the Cardinals over the weekend looked pretty good for the most part. They win 2 out of 3 against the New York Mets. And we asked the question going into the break, Alex, what's the most important thing that you have learned about the Cardinals? We are officially 1 month into this season. They're 13-15. That's not the record that any of us would have liked to have seen at this point, but they've gone about it in a way that it kind of flipped the team identity on its head from what I was expecting. What I've learned so far, you have a bullpen that can legitimately be weaponized. You've got a bullpen that you go into every single game believing if I can get into the 6th inning leading, I will win this game. They will not be able to beat me after we get to the 6th with a lead. And that was not the case at any point last season. You never had that amount of confidence in the depth of the bullpen. So for me, that's the biggest thing that I've learned. Alex, what would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned through 1 month of the Cardinals season?
I mean, the biggest thing for me, and it's really only been, 3 weeks, is you have an ace. And I mean, like watching Sonny Gray again perform over the weekend against the New York Mets, we've seen it now 3 times. I mean, he looks like a legit stopper that we've talked so much about. BT used to always bring up, you don't have that, we're going up against this guy. You finally have him right now. And, man, I mean, he's just pitching to a way and a degree that we have not seen in St. Louis for a really long time. So
32 strikeouts, 4 walks on the season.
I mean, he's going to be in the top 3 of the Cy Young conversation. Like, that for me seems like it's a guarantee unless an injury strikes up for him, which knock on wood right now. But I think for me, that's one of the few things that I've learned about this team is you have a legit stopper in Sonny Gray.
Yeah, so to go away from the ace in the bullpen, I think mine would be that they've raised their floor. I don't think the floor will bottom out from this team. I know that Alex is still skeptical about the starting rotation. I am as well. I'm still skeptical about the offense as a whole. If Goldschmidt and Arenado can get to 25 home runs, but what I think they have done is I think they have raised the floor because though I still have questions about the rotation, at least they're competitive every time they go out there. There's been 2 starts maybe where you could say, yeah, they really just did not get a good start from their rotation. And they've got the bullpen, to your point, to where they can just go to that if they have to. If Matz doesn't have it in 4 innings tonight, for example, they can just turn things over to the bullpen and continue to throw up zeros and remain in a game. Gibson, we've seen where he has 1 bad inning, but then he's able to find a way through 6 innings. Offensively, we've seen a little outbursts. Like Goldie looks like he's getting on track. We've seen that Contreras looks like one of the best hitters on this team. Like, there are little things that are going on to where there are still a lot of questions that have to be answered still that I just can't come to a full conclusion. But I do feel confident in saying this floor for this Cardinals team, they were able to raise it in the offseason, and it will not bottom out from them like it did last year, where all of a sudden at this point last year, the losing started to happen, and everything just went in a down spiral.
Not to be Debbie Downer in this spot, but I do think another area that I learned, especially over this weekend against the New York Mets, is like you can compete with these wild card teams like that. I mean, so you lost the series against the Arizona Diamondbacks the first time around, and then you won it the second time around, and then you just beat the New York Mets. To me, we talked about this last week. Like, you're a wild card team. You're in my opinion, you're not going to be the best team in the NL Central, especially if this offense sputters all season long. But if you're going up against a New York Mets team, when you face off against the Cincinnati Reds, when you take on these other teams that are in the same categories as you just proved to me in that one series you're better than the New York Mets. Now you got to do it against 3 other teams that are fighting for those wild card spots.
I mentioned this last week. 2-1 against San Diego. The one loss was a 1-run game. 1-2 against Philly, but the losses were 5-3 in extras, and then 4-3. 1 loss, 1-run game there. You split 3-3 against Arizona. Losses 4-2, 5-0, and then the 1 blowout. And then over the weekend, you go 2-1 against the Mets with the 1 loss coming in extra innings. You are a mirror image of these other teams that are in this muddied middle of the National League. That's not super exciting. It's not sexy. But if I had told you at the beginning of the season, and I felt this way too, if I had said, hey, guys, the Cardinals are going to get through the first month of the season and they're going to be a bottom 5 offense in Major League Baseball. What is their record?
Maybe 3 wins.
I mean, I would have thought that it was a disaster. I would have thought it was a repeat of last year. Through 28 games, I would have said 10-18, maybe. And that's in a best case scenario. 8-20, very much in the realm of the possible. Because with the rotation that they had and with them lacking a true center fielder, I would have assumed if they had a bottom 5 offense, they had gone pure offense in the outfield, which means, okay, now we've got Nootbaar in center. We've got Burleson playing every day in the outfield. I would have assumed injuries most likely somewhere as well.
See Burley in center?
Burley in right field.
Burley's in center. You don't have a win.
I would have assumed they're throwing every possible option at trying to extract the most offense possible. They haven't had to do that because the defense has been pretty good. Base running, I know the Wilson Contreras thing, I get it, bad moment. But base running has generally been pretty good.
Let's not complain about Wilson. He's the only guy that's hitting on this team.
Bullpen's been great. Rotation's been solid. You have, to your point, T-Bone, raised the floor. I think you're watching something resembling the floor of the 2024 Cardinals. I think the worst case scenario for this team is 80 wins. Worst case scenario. I do not think, and this is barring injuries, I suppose, that they're going to be a team that gets into the 70s or below. I just don't think they're bad enough in any one area. And I do think the offense will get better, and when it does, I think you've got real 90-win potential with this team. It feels weird saying that because they're still below 500 and have the worst record in the National League Central and the third worst run differential in the National League. But I think they're going to be pretty good this year.
I'm still skeptical with this offense, and I'm still skeptical with the pitching, and I'm going to stick to this, I guess, until I get proven wrong, which will be around Flag Day. But, like, you're just looking at it, you're going to have to be better. I think, to me, the 2 solid wildcard teams are Philadelphia and San Francisco. Like, to me, I believe those are going to be the 2 for sure wildcard teams. Now you're talking about being better than one of the other 3 NL Central teams and the New York Mets. And you just proved that you can be against the New York Mets. I think the real telling sign is going to be what you do when you go up against these other NL Central teams. But to give me more confidence, these are the types of games that I need to start seeing you continue to string together series wins.
Real quick on the text line, T-Bone, I'm curious your thoughts on this. BK, come on, man. At the beginning of the season, you thought this team would win the division. You have much higher expectations than where they are at today, and now you're trying to feed us a bunch of crap to make it seem like you're happy with this team's performance. Are you really happy being in 5th place in the division and being 2 games below 500 at this point in the season? No, of course not. I think what they've done so far in terms of the expectations that I had for the team, which were higher than many, they have not reached those expectations. They're 13-15 through the first 28 games. They have underperformed relative to my own expectations. Absolutely. And also, given what the reality is of the offense right now, I think they've outperformed what I would have expected had I known that the offense would be this bad this early on in the season. And you're also about to see, nobody likes talking about the schedule, but the schedule is about to open up in a real way. Detroit, Chicago, New York again, a team that you just won 2 out of 3 against, and I think you match up with pretty well. And then you have Milwaukee for a 4-game set, but after that, the LA Angels. This is the portion of your schedule that the rest of the division has really taken advantage of. You've seen the Cubs beat up on these kinds of teams. The Tigers, the White Sox, and the Angels, those are 3 teams that most of the NL Central has done some serious work against to rack up the wins. That's what you've got to do now. Now it is about continuing to maintain the 2 out of 3 regularly in these kinds of series. You need to, against these, let's say the Detroit, Chicago, and LA, you need to win like 7 of the 9, 6 out of the 9 at a minimum. That's got to be the expectation. And if you can continue doing that against the bad teams on your schedule, you're going to be a pretty good team by the end of the year.
Yeah, it's funny because I would say, like, if you told me the Cardinals finished the month, what are they, 2 games below 500, 13-15 at the beginning of the year, I'd said, okay, yeah, I could kind of see where they get to that point. But the reason I say it is probably more of a success is because it's opposite of what I thought. You know, I thought if they were going to be 13-15, it was because I didn't buy into this rotation, which has been okay at best, I would say. Outside Sonny Gray has been great. And I'd say that the offense was trying to carry them to that 13-win mark. And it's kind of been the opposite, where the pitching's been good enough. Really, the bullpen's been elite, and that's why they're able to shut down some of these games. And they have to rely on small ball, which, don't get me wrong, I love seeing some old-fashioned small ball. But, man, I know you got to hit for power. You got to slug, baby, slug to win in modern baseball. And they're not doing that. So that's why I would say, am I a little disappointed in 13-15? Yeah, absolutely. You shouldn't be in the dumpster of the NL Central in last place right now. The Pirates stink. But you know what? You're staying afloat, which is what they need to do. So that's where I would say that is a success for the St. Louis Cardinals. And you're right, the schedule is starting to open up a little bit. This stretch is where they really need to be able to go on a bit of a run. And if their pitching is able to kind of sustain it, I think you're going to be fine. And what I was going to say is, I always say weird-ish happens in the first month of the season, but I do think in the first month of the season, you can get a good idea of like what the floor is for a team. Last year, like we kind of stood on our soapbox of, no, this is going to be fine. Reality was the floor was this team sucks. I think by the end of this coming month, by the end of May, and I know, again, nobody wants to hear the be patient, you're going to know what the ceiling is. Because by the end of May, you're going to know how's the rotation hold up and does the offense start hitting. There will no longer be we got to wait on Goldie, we got to wait on Arenado. No, man, they ain't hitting by the end of May. Honestly, by the mid of May, you know exactly what the ceiling is for the St. Louis Cardinals, the 2024 Cardinals.
At this point last year, you were 10-18.
Yeah.
It was over.
Yeah.
We knew. We knew at this point last year, because this was after the San Francisco series where everything went to crap, and you're in the middle of the series against the Dodgers, and it's like, man, this is just not going to get better. You lost a game 1-0 with Monty on the mound. It's like, God, even when we pitch well, the team just finds ways to lose. That's not what they're doing this season for the most part. They've got to start scoring more runs. They've got to. And if that doesn't happen, this is going to be what you are all season long. You'll be somewhere in that like 78 to 82 win season. And we're going to look back on it and say, man, we should have known. We should have known early on that this was just going to be a team that couldn't find a way. But if they can get to 4+ runs regularly, you're going to be all right. They're just not getting there often enough so far this year. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we got to talk a little bit of hockey. Earlier today, Jeremy Rutherford put out a piece on Dalibor Dvorsky, talks to his juniors coach about his readiness for the NHL, when he's going to be ready for the NHL roster. We'll talk about that, what our expectations are for him going into the offseason also. Whoo, boy. Toronto Maple Leafs.
Woof.
We said last year this could be the implosion season. This is it. We are watching it in real time right now. We'll get into that coming up in 15 minutes. In or out is next. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Guys, I'm going to start with this. Big news over the weekend in the NFL. Cody Schrader, picked up by the San Francisco 49ers, did not get selected, unfortunately, in the NFL draft, so he's going to have to earn it once again. In or out, Alex, Cody Schrader will make the final 53-man roster for the San Francisco 49ers.
I'll say in, because you said that he's going to have to play in a Kyle Shanahan system, so why not get brought in by Kyle Shanahan? So congrats to you, Cody, because you just went into the best-case scenario. That's the kind of guy that you can't go wrong keeping on your roster, because if something happens, which, look, McCaffrey always has injuries at some point, that's a steady guy to go to and understand what you're going to get from him. I guarantee you he's going to be one of the harder workers out there. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say in on that.
Oh, boy.
Oh, here he is. If it was an Illinois running back, he'd be in.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, the odds are
Chase
stacked
Brown
against
got
him.
drafted, bro. I'm probably just going to say out just because you're right. The odds are stacked against him. I think he'll be picked up, though, like practice squad guy. Maybe he ends up getting signed to an active roster at some point. Like, I don't think he's just going to, like, not go drafted, not make a team, and then you're going to be like, oh, hey, he plays for the Vancouver whatever in the CFL. Like, no, I think he'll stick around.
Vancouver as a team.
What? Were you Canadian
the
Football
CFL.
League?
I thought she said the UFL. I was like, I don't know that they're part of that.
When are you going to give him a UFL, man? CFL.
He's going to be here for the Battlehawks. No, I think he is. I think he's going to make the roster, the final 53. They've got McCaffrey. They've got Elijah Mitchell. You know those two are going to make the roster. They drafted another running back in the 4th round from Troy. I think there's actually a chance that Cody Schrader ends up beating him out because they do have Jordan Mason, who's been on the roster for a little while now. They got Patrick Taylor Jr., kid that was in Green Bay for a little bit. I think there's a real chance that Cody Schrader, week 1, will be the number 3 running back for the 49ers. Mitchell always gets hurt. McCaffrey always has at least one game every year that he gets hurt. I think there will be a game where Cody Schrader gets 10 or more carries for the 49ers in 2024. Might be week 18, when they've already clinched everything, they're resting all the starters, but I think Cody Schrader will make the roster and will have at least one game this year with 10 or more carries. Alex, what do you got for us for in or out?
Guys, in or out, within the next 3 years, Jordan Binnington wins a Vezina. I don't know if you saw it.
3 years?
Yeah, next 3 years. So it came out today, the finalists, and it was Bobrovsky, Demko, and Connor Hellebuck. And even the ultimate pessimist about Jordan Binnington, Greg Wyshynski, believes that Jordan Binnington was robbed not getting any votes in the top 3.
If you asked the exact same question last year, I would have said no chance. I don't think he will. I'll go ahead and say in. I think his mentality change this year makes something like that possible. I don't think he could have made it through an entire season with the consistency that is required for a Vezina with the way that he approached last year. But this year, the change that we saw from him, I'll say in. I think he could get one. It's a high bar to clear, though. It's an unbelievably high bar.
I'm going to say out.
The Blues need to be good.
And it's a popularity
contest. That's the biggest thing for me, too, is the reason I would say out is, 1, I'm just going to take the field. But 2, in 3 years, what are the St. Louis Blues? You know, next year, I think they're going to get worse before they get better. 2 years from now, you're probably going to be on the first wave of getting out of the retool, and then maybe year 3, who knows? And that's where it just comes down to, like, hey, man, not only do you have to put up good numbers, you got to be on a really good team to win a Vezina. So that's why I would say out.
You got to be on a playoff team, in my opinion, to be a Vezina candidate. And I mean, I think that's probably what hindered Jordan Binnington. I'd say in, which shouldn't surprise anybody, but I also believe they're going to make improvements to the defense this offseason. I mean, hearing Doug talk about all of the defensemen, but then not mentioning both Justin Falk and Torrey Krug's name. And if you're talking about a new coach that's coming in with a new coaching staff, I'll give the benefit of the doubt that the defense improves. And if it does, you're talking about a guy who didn't have a great defense in front of him with a .913 save percentage. Does that get to 920? And if it gets to a 920 and you're talking about still picking up 30-plus wins, that's Vezina candidacy.
Why do you think it is that people ended up voting for Bobrovsky? It's a tough one.
You got there, buddy.
Over Jordan Binnington. Is it as simple as he was on a better team?
Yeah.
Is their save percentage pretty equal? If you look at saves, just total saves on the year, Jordan Binnington finished the season with about 200 more saves
Yeah,
he did.
I mean, he didn't even play the whole season. He played close to the same amount of games as Binnington, but like they didn't use him as a starting goaltender in the first half of the season. He was a backup. They were using that Alex Lyon, I think it was, that took over. I think one of it is playoff. I mean, you remember Doug telling us, BK, that Robert Thomas probably won't get Selke Trophy votes because you got to be a playoff team to get those, and that's what's going to hinder him. But I mean, I hate saying it, but the awards are always a popularity contest. It's always about guys who either were literally the best, which was Thatcher Demko, but guys, Demko was hurt a lot this season.
He started 51 games.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
But
Demko and Hellebuck were... Those are
Hellebuck's going to win it.
They had to be finalists, and then it was a matter of who's third on that list.
I look at it as it's typically a popularity contest, and it's the same guys that are always in the conversation. And once you get that one vote where you're in the top three, you'll never come out of it.
Yeah, and I think the 8 more wins helped them. And that's just
that's the playoff
to your point of being a playoff team. It's unlike the pitcher win where you could give up 6 runs, get 5 innings, and still win a game. A goalie actually wins a hockey game because he actually does make a lot of stops. So I think that was the biggest reason why.
Forced, T-Bone.
Guys, last year we saw Steven Matz pulled from the rotation by the end of May. His last start was May 24th. In or out, we will see Steven Matz still in the rotation by the end of this May.
Out. I don't think it's trending in the right direction. The only thing that will give him that grace is nobody is trying to take his job from him that quick. But I also... in typical Steven Matz form, he doesn't last this long. There's usually an injury that pops up that nags him, that kicks him out of the rotation for a little bit, and then you got to slow play him back in. So I'll say I'm out.
He's got to figure out this right-handed hitters thing. He's got to, man. They're killing him.
Well, you're trending towards bullpen.
333 batting average against this season against right-handed hitters, and they're having an 860 OPS against him so far this year. If that doesn't change, he will be pulled from the rotation. It's one of the same issues that he had early on last year. It got better down the stretch, and that was a stretch of games that we always reference. The last 6 starts, I want to say it was. Really good against right-handed hitters. But for the season, 755 OPS as opposed to 600 against lefties. I understand there's going to be some kind of a split there. It's always going to happen, especially with a back-end left-handed starter. Can't be that big. So... I'm a little pessimistic right now on Steven Matz. It's frustrating to watch. I'll say he ends up out of the rotation at the end of May. The question is who replaces him, and I don't know. I think it might be Sam Roberse.
Or they put Zach Thompson back there after he goes to Memphis for a while.
He sucks, so I hope not. I would say...
he was really good in relief the other day.
Good for him. He's not a big leaguer. I would say...
that's because the Cardinals broke him.
I would say in. I think... Steven Matz has that massive split that you referenced. I think it's Roberse. I think by the time you get to June, Roberse is going to have more innings under his belt, be at about 150 in his career at AAA. And if he continues to pitch well, that's the guy that you just at least try it. Bring him up, try it, see if it works, and move Matz to the bullpen.
Roberse, by the way, was named minor league pitcher of the week, I want to say it was.
Yeah.
This past week. He's been really good, man. 29 innings so far for Memphis, 5 starts, 1.8 ERA. 29 strikeouts
and
so far
6
this
walks.
Year. He's been
got
really,
command
really
down
good for them. By the way, Gordon Graceffo, I know he's a guy that a lot of Cardinals fans are wondering about. 4.9 ERA, 24 innings for them so far this year. Michael McGreevy, similar. He's eating innings, but really nothing else. 4.9 ERA for him. Connor Thomas has been okay, but he's out of the bullpen now. Yeah. He's not starting games for them any longer. It's been a lot of
McGreevy and Graceffo, I think, are going to be like Thompson and Liberatore 2.0.
That depth is starting to really kind of wear thin right now in the Cardinals system.
I think McGreevy's going to be what people hoped Jake Woodford would have been. A number 5 starter that can come in and throw innings for you. And I'm not telling you you should be excited about that, but I think that's kind of what he is at this point. And I think Graceffo's most likely path is what we've seen from Liberatore, where he's going to end up being the right-handed power reliever that you have up in the big league level. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service X line for in or out. You give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. From the 314, guys, in or out, Matthew Liberatore panning out as a bullpen arm instead of a starter like he was projected to be, made the trade even worse than originally feared. What would have been better if Matthew Liberatore became a number 5 starter at the big league level or him becoming a high leverage reliever at the big league level?
I
think there's more value in the high leverage reliever at this point in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. I brought up Andrew Miller. Like, if you can get 3 to 4 years of Andrew Miller-esque for Matthew Liberatore, to me, that's a win. And you're never going to compete with Randy Arozarena, so that just needs to get out of your head. Now you need to talk about what's best for a Cardinals push. And to me, if you gave me those two options, I would take high leverage arm every day of the week.
Yeah, I would too. And I think a lot of people say, like, oh, if he just becomes a bullpen arm, you still really lost the trade. I'm not saying it's a win, but it's not a significant loss. If you get somebody in a trade and they become a big leaguer, I would call that a win. And especially if he's a high leverage arm, because to your point, I think the high leverage arm is much more valuable than the number 5 starter who throws like 120 innings and you're always looking to replace him. Look back to my last in or out on Steven Matz.
By the way, Randy Arozarena is batting 152 this season with an OPS of 480.
Right, Cardinals won the trade.
Yes.
Yeah.
It all
Man,
ended
that
up
Mo's
working
good at
out.
his job.
Hell yeah.
But I am happier with little Mo.
Whoa.
Oh.
Easy over there.
From the 314,
Sorry,
guys,
still can't
in or
develop
out,
talent.
Justin Jefferson's numbers will be, Marvin Harrison Jr. will have better numbers in his rookie year than what Justin Jefferson had. Justin Jefferson, for those that are curious,
And
finished
Googling
his
it?
rookie season with 1,400 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns.
Oh, out.
Marvin Harrison Jr., 1,400 yards in year 1?
Out.
Question mark.
Who's Marvin Harrison Jr.'s quarterback?
The guy that you do not like.
Yeah, that's why I'm out. Justin Jefferson had Kirk Cousins throwing to him. Marvin Harrison Jr. has Kyler Murray. You tell me who's better. Don't.
I mean,
Kyler 4 years ago was better. This Kyler, not so much.
He's not playing COD anymore, man.
Yeah, sure. That's what he
I would
says.
take Kyler.
Take Kyler now over Kirk Cousins now. Yes. Back then, I would take Kirk.
I disagree.
I think I would take Kurt, too.
I will still say I think Justin Jefferson will finish with better numbers. I don't think that Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, asking anybody to put up 1,400 yards in their rookie season's insane, but I would take Kyler Murray over him.
I would say I'm out just because I agree with Alex. I think Justin Jefferson was in a better spot and had a better quarterback than Kyler. And I just think Kyler's a little bit worse than Kirk Cousins, but I think he's going to be around 900 to 1,000 yards. That's where I would put him probably for his rookie season.
I think he'll be over 1,000.
I think the floor is like 900, and your ceiling's probably 1,000 to like 1,100. I don't think 1,400.
Yeah, I don't think 1,000. I think you'll be just under it.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. I just don't know who else they're throwing to, if not him.
Well, he can't
That
throw.
might be another problem. He's going to be doubled and triple teamed all the
Your
time.
quarterback can't throw.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into the junk drawer. Katie Wu joins us at the top of the hour, but coming up next, what's the plan for the Blues this offseason with Dalibor Dvorsky, and how does that influence what they decide to do in free agency or via trades? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care. I had that panic moment that we've all gone through at some point with our HVAC system over the weekend. Started to get warm. I flipped the air on, and it didn't get cool fast. And I'm thinking, oh, no, here it goes. Luckily, Classic Air Care has taken such good care of my 26-year-old unit that it did get going. I have my maintenance scheduled this week. Classic Air Care, I trust them when it comes to my HVAC system. My family has been trusting them. They've been using Classic Air Care since my dad purchased the home back in the early 2000s. Classic Air Care, they've been making people comfortable since 1926. You heard me talk about their intelligent technicians. That's where the trust comes from. I also talk about the customer service that they provide because, look, I've been through this like you've been through this. Middle of summer, something's not working right. You give them a call because I'm on the maintenance program. They're able to come out there the next day, get it solved, and back to that cool air in my home. So get with the proper people before it starts to get crazy hot outside. Get with Classic Air Care. You can check them out online at classicaircare.com.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals fell to the Mets yesterday, but they take 2 of 3 from New York, and they continue their road trip to Detroit tonight. 5:40 will be first pitch as Kenta Maeda gets the start for Detroit. Steven Matz will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So what's the plan for the Blues with Dalibor Dvorsky this offseason? And how does that influence their plans via free agency and via the draft? Honestly, via trades as well. Alex, a couple of weeks ago, we were able to catch up with Blues general manager, president of hockey operations, Doug Armstrong, and we asked him about the number 2 center position. Here's what he had to say to us about that a couple of weeks ago.
It's not about what's going to happen next year. It's like, how long do you stunt Dvorsky's growth? Because that has to be him. Like, if we're drafting the top 10 and he's not in that area, so if you go out and sign a guy at 27 or 28 to a 7-year deal, then all of a sudden Dvorsky's going to have to, someone's going to the wing at some point, because you don't want these good players, and that's what we found out Bucci can do, and that's what I think a lot of centermen like Dvorsky's age, they start on the wing and move into the middle. So I'm talking, because just in case we do it, I'd like to do it, but just, that there's a plan that it's not like, oh, they signed a centerman and now Dvorsky's never going to play here, they got to trade him. That's not going to happen. But it's just, every decision has a longer term effect than the next year, and we just want to make sure that we're continuing to build moving forward. But the number 2 center part this year was a thing that seemed to be in flux right from day one.
Alex, when I saw The Athletic post a piece earlier today from Jeremy Rutherford about, is Dalibor Dvorsky ready for the NHL, what the Blues as junior coach and Dvorsky have to say, my immediate thought was, don't push him. Don't push him too fast for his own good. And then I thought about it a little bit more, and it's like, man, if he appears to be ready in training camp next year, given where the Blues are at in their build, it's probably smart. Go ahead and find out. And if the answer is no, 2, 3, 4 weeks in, you can send him back down to the AHL. That's always an option for you after you find out what he needs to work on to get his game to NHL ready. But I think it really comes down to what they see out of him in training camp. But I do think his readiness, where they think he is right now, should influence their offseason decisions. If they think he's going to be that number 2 center by the end of the year, allow that to stay open. Like, don't go out there and sign a long-term option. Don't go get Elias Lindholm. Don't go make one of those kinds of a move. Get your next version of Kevin Hayes if you want some kind of an insurance plan there. But otherwise, him next to Braden Shin doesn't sound like such a bad idea.
No, not at all. I don't think you plan next year as him as a number 2 centerman. You plan for him next year as a top 6 forward. And that's the best way that I could look at this. And I've made the comp to Wyatt Johnston. I think Curbs has made the comp to Wyatt Johnston. For those that don't know, he plays with the Dallas Stars. Last year was his rookie year, and he was 19 years old. And he stepped in, played all 82 games, had 24 goals and 41 points, and played in the playoffs for them. To me, I think that's what Dalibor Dvorsky could be, a 19-year-old next season who steps into the NHL. But Johnston did that around a good group of established NHL players to where he wasn't relied to be a top 6 forward. He was a third-line forward for them that was playing with Jamie Benn that could focus more. Honestly, it's kind of like what Robbie Fabry did his first year in St. Louis, to where the Blues said it's not worth sending him back to juniors. Let's keep him at the NHL roster. And he played with a Paul Stastny. So you were covered with veterans and you were able to succeed in the NHL. The part that I always forget with Dalibor Dvorsky is he didn't play the full 68-game schedule in the OHL. Remember, he started the season in Sweden, and he had to get shifted to the OHL because they weren't playing him. And in JR's piece, he talked with the head coach of the Sudbury Wolves, and they basically said, man, if he plays a 68 games, he was on pace to score 56 goals and have 115 points. Guys, Mitch Marner, in his final year in juniors, had 116 points. So, I'm not saying it's Mitch Marner, but what I'm saying is give him a shot. You've got I think it's the 9-game threshold that if you opted to send him back to juniors, you could. So you got 9 games there, and he's on an entry-level contract. So if it doesn't work out in training camp or if he doesn't look great in preseason, then you start him in the AHL. To me, he's proven everything he needs to do in juniors. I would go into next season saying, let's say nothing else changes with our offseason. Top 6, you've got Thomas, Shen, Neighbors, Kyrou, Buchnevich, throw Bolduc, throw Saad in there, however you want to view it. 7 guys, and if I say Dalibor Dvorsky to me is a top 6 forward, worst case scenario, he's starting on the 3rd line and he's growing as you get through the NHL.
So that's the blue side of things. Around the NHL, one player that might influence roster decisions elsewhere or here in St. Louis, I suppose. I would doubt it, but possible, is what's taking place right now in Toronto. Alex, it was announced earlier today, Austin Matthews is not expected to play in Game 5 for the Toronto Maple Leafs. William Nylander earlier in this series was struggling to battle through some kind of a migraine issue, reportedly. Mitch Marner has also come under some scrutiny, and in the last game, Game 4, his line mates, Nylander and Matthews, were directing most of their ire towards him, and it appears that Mitch Marner's the guy that's getting the majority of the frustration from the fan base. Here's an example of that from a Toronto Maple Leafs podcast.
You don't even have the guts to try, because you might try and come up short and fail. That's what that shows me. You insecure baby. All you do is and float and look around for the easy way to go. I want the easy way. That's pathetic. I don't want this guy on my team. I don't want him near my franchise.
By the way, that's a former NHL player who played with the Maple Leafs.
Yep. So
that's how it's going right now.
It's not going particularly well, to put it lightly. Alex, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the end of this version, the core 4, that idea. It's over now. It was a grand experiment of finding out, can you win while constructing a roster the way that the Maple Leafs have? And we have now found out pretty definitively, I would say, no, it's too lopsided. There's too much money, too many resources that have been devoted towards offense-first forwards, and not enough attention has been paid to the defensive core and the goalie. Now, if they would have figured out with young, cheap contracts, entry-level deals, either defensively or in net, they probably could have found a way to make this work. But they never did, and they still haven't. And now the result is they're going to be swept away, not in a literal sweep, but booted once again in the first round of the NHL's postseason by a team that going into the season, everybody expected regression because they had so many stars that ended up leaving their roster due to retirement.
Yeah. You know what the problem with the Maple Leafs is? This is what happens when you rely on offense to win you playoff games, where offense is very hard to come by. You get frustrated. And it's amazing because that's not the only one. I mean, there were tons that just going after Mitch Marner, calling him a baby and calling him doesn't step up in the playoffs. And our favorite guy, Jay Fresh, who everybody says is all advanced analytics, he just went solely off of goals. In the past 4 postseasons, the Leafs are up 22-11 in goals at 5-on-5 when Marner's on the ice. Matthews has 1 point so far through this postseason. Nylander has 0, played in only 2 games, and everybody's pointing at Mitch Marner. The end of the road is here for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and frankly, this is happening because frustration has taken over for this group. And I've seen a lot of people pointing, because I've said that Sheldon Keefe would be a good option for the Blues. Everybody's pointing at Sheldon Keefe saying, well, this is why he's not a good coach. Everything's falling apart. I'd argue this is poor leadership, too, in the player side of it.
I'd argue it's poor roster construction.
I mean, you got Matthews yelling at his line mate, who's been just as productive as him, because he's not scoring goals in the postseason when you've scored 1. The problem for the Toronto Maple Leafs isn't a coaching problem. It's you've put together an entire roster where 5 guys make up over half of your salary cap.
They are what people think Vegas is. Yep. They are all flash and dash and none of the substance. They don't have a goalie. They don't have the defensive core to be able to make up for any of the potential issues that could arise offensively in the postseason. Vegas has all of that stuff, dude. Like Aiden Hill, you take it or leave it, whatever. They've got the defensive core. And when they go out and get these stars, they supplement it with really good role players. Guys like Ivan Barbashev, who they trade a former first-round pick for at the deadline last year, and they say, this is a guy that we need to keep around. And then they keep him there. Like, they have a lot of those kinds of pieces on that roster. Dude, where is the connective tissue on the Maple Leafs? Where is it?
They're going after each other on the bench.
It doesn't exist. So you don't have those middle 6 players that are just really solid, get to the front of the net, get your job done, and make life easier for those around you. Hell, even Edmonton has found a way to do a better job at finding those pieces. It's why Vancouver works. Vancouver works this year because they figured out the other stuff. Like, they've had the stars there for a while. It's the rest of the roster that needed to come together. They just have never developed that in Toronto.
Well, and Edmonton had it. They had Michael Bunting on their team. Or, I'm sorry, not Michael Bunting. They had Zach Hyman on their team.
Talking about Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah.
And they got rid of him. Why? Because they banked on the 4 dudes that were supposed to carry them to a playoffs, and now you're realizing that offense doesn't win postseasons.
Not like this.
No.
Not without having the defense to be able to rely on.
Keefe will be fired. My gut is telling me, not my gut, I'm guessing Mitch Marner is going to be traded, and they're going to make significant changes to that team.
Is that somebody that you'd be interested in
Yes.
if you're the Blues? Would you at least make a call?
I would. I would make a call and find out what it would cost, because I just do not buy or pay any attention to all of this. Mitch Marner doesn't step up into the playoffs. I mean, last season he was a point-per-game player for them in the playoffs.
We used to hear that about Vladimir Tarasenko as well.
People used to say it about Pavel Demitra, too, in St. Louis.
It used to be said about Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah. I mean, guess what's important in the playoffs? Everybody coming together.
Now, the hard part, he's going to make like $13 million. So you're talking about Kyrou plus Buchnevich just to make the money work.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's a winning player that needs to get out of an organization that seems to be lost.
Katie Wu joins us in about 10 minutes. The Junk Drawer next here on 101 ESPN. Let's dive into the junk drawer. Katie Wu joining us in about 5 minutes or so. T-Bone, what do you got for us today?
Guys, I'm rooting for the Nashville Predators to get eliminated from the playoffs just from what one fan did over the weekend.
Was it Taylor Lewin making his daughter chug water on the cam?
No,
because that was awesome.
That's fantastic.
You sent that to me, and I hope I do that with my daughters.
Girl dad goals.
Yeah, I'm going to teach her how to chug milk.
No, it's what another fan did, which is they did the beer chug, but they did it by pouring it into a catfish's mouth.
Yeah. That's
and then
disgusting.
drinking the beer out of the catfish's mouth.
They do this at Nashville.
Which is nasty. Nashville should not advance from the playoffs. They should be just eliminated because of this.
Yeah, I hate this. They've always done this stupid catfish thing. It's like what Detroit used to do where they chuck octopus on the ice.
I don't care about, sure, throw an octopus on the ice. Yeah. In fact, I'm impressed how you got it in the building, but do it.
I'm always impressed by that.
Chugging beer out of an animal? No, that's disgusting.
Dude, we're going to have some kind of a virus that comes out of this.
Oh, great. Another pandemic.
Is
this where COVID came from? Chugging catfish?
Sports because of crap like this. I don't need that. Don't send in any of your scientific or political opinions on COVID, please.
We opened the door.
I don't care to see them. But if we're just having jokes here, talking about this this is absurd.
What do you think it tastes like?
Not good.
Oof.
Not good.
Fishy.
What beer do you think they poured into it?
It's Budweiser.
It is
Budweiser?
Budweiser?
It is.
Oh, man, why would you disgrace a great beer like that?
I know.
King of Beers does not need to go into catfish.
For the good
of the world, we need them to be eliminated.
It's not even funny.
I know. I think this is a punishment next year.
No. I will not approve it. Look, man, I drink mayonnaise and coffee. I will not do catfish beer.
It probably tastes the same.
No, that's disgusting. I hate fish, too.
Just looking at it, I have to.
Text line said, T-Bone, would you drink a beer out of a shoe, though? Shoes?
No.
Didn't guys do that at Ballpark Village?
Yeah, we saw it happen in front of us.
That was disgusting. That dude just pulled it off.
I know. I couldn't look at him the same.
It was hot out, too, so you know that shoe was sweaty. He pulled it. It was a sandal, too, wasn't it? He had, no socks on. It was, oh, God.
No, I'm not
filthy people.
Putting it in the shoe either.
Okay.
If you want me to chug a beer, I'm more than happy. I'll shotgun a beer if you want, but don't be putting it in an animal's mouth.
Yeah, can't you just
don't put it in another person's mouth, and don't put it in a damn shoe.
Can't you just chug the beer while holding the catfish? Still got the catfish.
Why do we need a catfish? Coming up next, Katie Wu,
Nashville,
Cardinals insider for The Athletic here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN, and we're happy to go out to the hotline where Katie Woo is on the line. She's joining us on BK and Ferrario as she does each and every Monday. You can read her great work over at The Athletic and follow her on Twitter at Katie J. Woo. Katie, we appreciate the time as always. We're starting with the obvious here, which is a question about have you ever consumed a beer, chugged it out of a catfish before? Is that something that you have done in your life?
Like the actual fish?
Yeah, the actual fish. Have you ever chugged a beer out of a catfish?
I'm not necessarily a good beer chugger.
Okay.
In general, and I think the catfish would really just kind of ruin the whole vibe for me. So I'm going to go no, but props to whoever has done that. That sounds interesting.
Apparently, this is a thing in Nashville.
Yeah.
We were unaware of this, but apparently they chug beers out of catfish.
Follow-up question, Katie. What would you chug a beer out of?
Shoe?
Don't say a can or a cup. That's not allowed.
So a funny story is my brother's best friend at an Oakland A's game was sitting next to someone who had a prosthetic leg.
Oh, my God, yes.
And they chugged a beer out of that.
Your brother did?
My brother and his friend.
There you go.
Did they look at the guy afterwards and say, we have a leg up on the competition?
Okay, that was well done.
Should have done that. But honestly, what immaculate vibes. Amazing, right?
It was. I would love to chug a beer out of a prosthetic leg. That would be awesome.
I'd try it.
Dream for me,
I'm much more willing to try that than the catfish thing. The catfish thing just doesn't make sense to me. All right, Katie, let's talk a little bit about the St. Louis Cardinals, who had a good weekend overall in New York. Win 2 out of 3 yesterday, obviously disappointing finish, but played a good game nonetheless. We are now 1 month into the Cardinals' regular season. What is the biggest thing that you have learned about this team, Katie?
That is insane that we are 1 month into the season. I feel like I blinked and we went from L.A. to Detroit. I think the biggest takeaway from this Cardinals team, and while I understand the organization, the players, the coaches don't want to reference last year, that's totally fine. As media and fans, last year was very important, so we're going to keep referencing it. It's completely different. And I wrote about this earlier last week, but everything about this Cardinals team is remarkably different from what we saw last year. And I know that there are going to be similarities on paper. You look at the record, it's better, but not by a lot from where this team was last April. But everything down to the style of games they're winning, the trends that they're displaying that should improve, the overall clubhouse camaraderie, it's a completely different ball club. And we talked about this at the beginning of the season. If the Cardinals went through April given the players they were missing and their brutal travel schedule and finished with a 500 record, we would take that. So Cardinals 2 games under 500, pretty close. I'm not at all suggesting that we should settle for 500, but all things considered, let's say they finish this Tigers series, they win it, and they're 500 heading into May. All of the trends that we're seeing in April suggest that this team can get better. Now it's just a matter of if they do or not, but I, at least, am encouraged by what I've seen from this Cardinals team over the last 4 weeks.
I think for me, Katie, and I thought this last year and it never happened, but this season it feels like I'm waiting to see a win streak string together. Not so much of picking up series wins because I feel like it's important, but watching what the Phillies did after their slow start where they put 8 wins together, is that kind of what's missing from this Cardinals team right now, of them stringing a lot of games together?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, because it seems right now that we're riding, and Ollie Marmol said this and so did Wilson Contreras, it can be easy to ride the roller coaster. And when you're winning 2 games, losing 2, win 1, lose 2, you're back and forth, up and down, that can be hard for fans to buy in. I think if this Cardinals team really wants to convince this fan base that this year will be different, a winning streak will help. Again, when you look at the overall quality of games they're playing, the pitching, pretty good. The defense, excellent. The offense, not so hot, literally. But you really think that Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Gorman, Lars Nootbaar are going to continue to hit the way that they are? Their careers suggest otherwise. And I think, once this offense gets clicking, this could be an overall competitive Cardinals team. Now, I don't want to write off the offense after 1 month. Don't get me wrong. It was not a good month for the Bats. But I believe that Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt's careers grant them a little more leeway here. Let's see what this offense looks like in the next 2 weeks, and then maybe we can have a broader discussion. But we see the bats heat up. We see the Cardinals go on a win streak. I think you'll see fans start to buy a little bit more into this current club.
They have 18 home runs as a team, Katie, which is tied for the fewest in all of Major League Baseball. Last year, they got like 46% of their runs off of home runs. This year, it's at like 26%. It's not been a big part of their offense, and unfortunately, it needs to be a bigger part. And that all goes back to the Goldie and Arenado point that you just made. Goldie has 2 home runs. Arenado has 1. I asked this of the guys earlier today. I want to get your thoughts on it as well. If I set the over-under at 25 home runs apiece for Goldie and Arenado this season, would you take the over or the under for those two right now?
Ooh, good question. I would take the under for Paul Goldschmidt, but not by much, and I would take the over for Arenado. I don't think that Arenado being on pace for 6 home runs all year is feasible. That's not going to happen. Goldschmidt, I think a little less than Nolan. Now, don't get me wrong. Both need to contribute with the long ball. You know, he can hit for power. He can spray the ball. But Nolan Arenado is your textbook pull power hitter, and that's missing in the heart of this lineup. I thought Wilson Contreras' bats have looked a lot better. You like see Lars Nootbaar coming around, but I think, we're not saying anything bold here. This Cardinals offense doesn't go if Goldie and Nolan don't go. You'd certainly like to see more of that power from those guys.
Speaking of power, Katie, Sonny Gray has shown his power in the, 3 starts we've seen of him. They finally have that stopper at the front of their rotation. How much of a difference is that going to make for this team moving forward?
It's funny. I had a conversation with a couple of the coaches after the day after Sonny's start against the Brewers, and I said, this is the first time that I've covered this team where they've had a true ace, it feels like. And at times, various players have stepped up and filled that role, but not like what we've seen Sonny do. Dating back to 2021, even 2020 before I was on the beat, it seemed like the Cardinals lacked that surefire number 1 guy that can go out there and set the tone for the whole ball game. And that's exactly what Sonny Gray does. I was a fan of this signing when it happened. I remained very high on it for obvious reasons. I think he just commands that rotation, and in doing so, commands the whole game. You feel good when you look at the probables for a game and you see St. Louis Cardinals, Sonny Gray. And I think that's what's really been missing from this pitching staff is when was the last time you looked at a probable starting pitching matchup and had 100% confidence that guy was going to give you a well-pitched ball game? That, to me, has been the difference Sonny Gray has made already in his very limited time in a Cardinals uniform. I think Cardinals fans should be pretty excited that they have him for the next 3 years. Katie
was our guest here on 101 ESPN. You can read her great work over at The Athletic and follow her on Twitter at Katie J. Wu. Katie, in this series against Detroit, the Cardinals' probable starters are Matz, Gibson, and Michaelis. You just said when you see the name Sonny Gray listed as the starting pitcher for that day, you have a lot of confidence. When you see those 3 names listed as the starters going into this series, what is your level of confidence?
I think it varies. With Matt, after a couple of bummer starts, you'd like to see him get back into the quality start range because we've seen what this Cardinals team can do when they're pitching at least 6 innings, or even Lance Lynn yesterday, some quality innings. Doesn't have to be all the way at 6. I've actually thought Kyle Gibson has been really strong for this club. The ERA is a bit misleading because of his clunker against Miami, but he's had 4 quality starts in 5 outings, and I think he's done a really good job of limiting damage. Miles Michaelis, not the month he wanted, but he's going to go out there and give you length. Now, we can go back and forth on the importance of innings versus quality innings. I think if you see those 3 guys, Kyle Gibson especially, you feel like you have a chance to win that ball game if the offense comes to life, but you'd like to see Steven Matz and Miles Michaelis take some steps ahead in May for sure.
With Steven Matz specifically, Katie, what do you think the runway is for him? I'll ask it that way in terms of trying to get this thing back on track, because it started out so great, and then over the last couple of starts, it's been really rough for Steven Matz, and it looks a lot like last year where the right-handed hitters are giving him trouble.
I think the leeway is still, or the runway is still pretty long, and that's because there really is virtually no help in AAA. Zach Thompson just got sent down to Memphis to be that 6th starter, the role that he was designated for at the start of the season. But he's going to take some time to build back up and get at length. Remember, the Cardinals used him as kind of a multi-inning reliever, so he's not quite on a starter's schedule. I know there's been a couple of prospects in AAA. Sam Roberta has had a great month, but Steven Matz is being paid the money that he is to pitch as a starter. And right now, with the rest of the pitching staff overall doing really well, I think Matz has a little bit more runway than last year, especially because, once/if these bats come around, we're probably not as hyper-focused on 1 out of 5 starters not being able to pretty much carry the weight the rest of the rotation has. But for a variety of reasons, especially being that there really isn't a more viable option in AAA, we'll see Steven Matz continuously throughout this rotation.
So, Katie, on the health side of thing for the Cardinals, it sounds like that there's some positive news on the Dylan Carlson. Any other news on the Middleton front?
I think Middleton has continued his throwing program. So, forearm strains take a little time. Riley O'Brien also started his throwing program, but those guys are still a couple of weeks away. And that's really exciting to think about what this Cardinals bullpen can be once those two come back. We've talked a lot about the big three, which, by the way, I asked last week if there was a cool nickname for those three yet.
Leave it up to me, Katie.
Laughed at. Yeah, and said no. And the best they could come up with was the big three. Seriously?
Wait.
Best we could come up with. But obviously those guys their work speaks for itself. I think Liddy, he was so close, really just a couple of pitches away yesterday from breaking through, but I like what I'm seeing out of him in the bullpen. And Ryan Fernandez, kind of nasty. So that, when you look at those guys, and getting a Giovanni Gallegos confidence back up will be important because he's going to be a factor in those late innings as well. You add Middleton and O'Brien back in the mix, and you're suddenly looking at what could be, I think, one of the most underrated bullpens in baseball. So I can certainly see why fans are excited to see when Middleton/O'Brien return. Unfortunately, it's still going to be a couple of weeks, but at least they started their throwing program, and ideally the Cardinals will be able to pinpoint sometime in the next month on when their possible return could be.
When Carlson returns, immediately the starting center fielder again? Yeah?
Good question, because Michael Ciani really does play an elite center field, and he's saved runs out there. I mean, and it's not to suggest that Carlson can't, but I think it would, to me, Michael Ciani profiles as the perfect defensive replacement. He can come in, play great defense, get the bunt down when you need him to. If Ciani was hitting a little bit more, I think you'd have more of a competition, but I can see Ollie Marmol going through 4 outfielders in 3 spots depending on matchups. And we'll see how Carlson looks. He had a great spring. It was really disappointing to see how that ended. I know everyone in the organization was really encouraged and proud of how Carlson came into spring. So I would expect to see him there, but maybe not as the everyday, continuous starting outfielder. I think maybe they could rotate some guys in. One thing for sure, though, they're going to keep Lars Nootbaar in the corners, so that center field rotation will likely be Carlson and Ciani, so we'll see how that goes from there.
And as a follow-up on that, the other injured guy that we need to ask about, have you heard anything on the new status of Tommy Edman? Is he at least progressing at this point?
Yes, Tommy Edman is progressing, but that is going to be a slow progression. We've heard that since spring. When the Cardinals said a couple of weeks, in my mind, I said, okay, a couple of months. And that has nothing to do with past history, but just the nature of Tommy's injury. I mean, he essentially has to rebuild his swing from scratch. Mathematically, that's going to take some time, and he's doing it, of course, from both sides. So Tommy Edman progressing, no setbacks, that's great. But this is not going to be something like Carlson where he could take a couple of rounds of BP, do a couple of swing programs, and be cleared for a rehab assignment. You're looking at an extensive rehab process for Tommy Edman as he essentially builds all of the strength back in his arm and then builds all of his swings, plural, back as well. So not much of an update there, but it's exciting to think about what this Cardinals outfield already could look at with Tommy Edman back. They certainly could use his on-base skills, but it looks like it's going to be a little bit longer for Tommy.
Katie Wu does fantastic work over at The Athletic. You can follow her on Twitter at KatieJWu. You can always see her as well this summer on KMOV each and every Sunday. She's doing Sports Sunday at 10 o'clock on KMOV. She started that last night. Congratulations on that opportunity. We'll certainly be watching and we'll be listening every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Thanks for the time as always.
Thanks, guys. You are the best. I will talk to you next week.
That's Katie Wu. Appreciate her time as always here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, I don't want to hear it.
Oh, I'm so coming up with a nickname, so you just need to prepare.
I don't want to hear it.
Here's the thing, though. Do I come up with a nickname for the back 3 or the whole bullpen?
You're out.
Get the hell out of
You
here.
have lost your privileges.
What have you ever nicknamed in your life?
Ferrario 5 tomorrow on the 5 best nicknames.
Yeah, baby.
We'll do that tomorrow. Coming up next, does it give you more confidence or less in the Cardinals that they've been able to play 500 baseball without any power whatsoever? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. I'm taking a page out of Alex Ferrario's book. It is time to put together some moneyline parlays for the NHL's playoffs. I've got the Panthers. I've got the Golden Knights. I've got the Hurricanes. And I've got the Canucks. Those 4 teams, a 4-leg parlay. If I put that on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, guess what? I'm winning $140. But I'm not doing that because I'm going to go over to the Circa Sportsbook app in the state of Illinois. It's the biggest sportsbook in Las Vegas, and now it's at your fingertips in Illinois. And Alex, by doing so, I'm winning $155 on a $20 bet. I'm getting more money, better bang for my buck by betting with Circa.
Download the app now and look at all of these odds. I'm telling you, they want you to shop around other sportsbooks because they know you'll come back and bring in the most money possible. Whether it's parlays, whether it's just individual bets, you get better odds through the Circa Sportsbook app in Illinois. So download it, check it out, start putting those big parlays together, and bring in the money. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Liberatore, the pitch. On the ground, slowly hit. Gotta hurry. One there. Wins on. Saves the day. Liberatore gets the double play ball. And the cannon arm of Mason wins, sends us to the 11th.
Alex, the St. Louis Cardinals are relying a lot right now. They're relying too much, honestly, on small ball, defense, and pitching. That can get you to a certain point.
What is this, the 80s?
But it's not going to get you to where you want to go. Not with this pitching staff. You just don't have, the Seattle Mariners, what they have pitching-wise right now, that's not what the Cardinals have. By the way, have you guys seen what the Mariners pitching staff has done so far this season?
No, I've seen what my boy Logan Gilbert's done.
It's insane. Logan Gilbert has allowed 9 earned runs this season. George Kirby has allowed 15. And Bryce Miller, who people talked about as being a really good option for the Cardinals potentially in the offseason, he's thrown 28 innings and has allowed 7 earned runs so far this year. He's been awesome. So their pitching staff's working out as expected. All right. So what I wanted to get to, though, is that the Cardinals don't have that. They don't have that kind of a rotation. They have one of those guys.
Could have had it. You just didn't want to trade him.
They've got Sonny Gray. You feel confident when he's on the mound. But you're leaning too heavily right now on your pitching and on your defense and on the small ball. What they need is power. They need T-Bone's slug, baby, slug mantra. Last season, Alex, they were a little too reliant on the long ball. They finished the season with 209 home runs, and their 334 RBIs on those, that accounted for 46% of their runs scored on the season. So almost every other run that the Cardinals scored was a result of a home run. So they had to hit the ball over the fence for them to be able to score consistently. This year, they only have 18 home runs on the season. Those 18 home runs have resulted in 28 total runs. So they aren't hitting enough with guys on base. And so that's 28% of your overall runs on the season. They've scored exactly 100 runs so far this year. Alex, if they don't start getting more power, they are not going to be able to be a contender. I still believe that they will get that power. I think Arenado's going to eventually figure it out. I think Goldie is going to eventually figure it out. Nootbaar, same thing. Gorman, I think he's going to continue to progress in this power way. Does it give you confidence in this team that they have been able to be right around 500 without any of that power? Or do you have more concerns because you don't think they're going to get to that power? Where are you at right now on that spectrum? Because you've got to be somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah, I'm more concerned. Like if this was the concernometer and 10 is like panicking and screaming nonstop, I'm not like a 7 on the power, because it's not like it's just this season. We saw this happen towards the end of last year too, where specifically your 2 big bats really significantly dropped off. I just don't know if the power is going to come consistently for this team. I think you're going to get spurts. I think this offense, power-wise, is going to be a lot like Nolan Gorman, where you'll get a couple of weeks of it's just, oh my gosh, look at these guys, come on. But more times than not, when you go an entire month the way that they just did, I think this is how they're winning baseball games. And this is my concern with it is, yes, it is very, very beneficial for a team to figure out how to win ball games when you're not hitting home runs, when you're not hitting doubles, when you're not hitting triples, because you know how to win when you're backed up against the wall with pitching, with defense, with great base running. You know how to win that way. But at some point, all of that is going to disappear. And you got to have some type of fallback. And if you don't have that offense that's clicking for you, specifically when your pitching goes, which I'm very concerned that other than Sonny Gray, it is not going to be this sustainable. You got to start showcasing some power at some point, because otherwise everybody else is going to know how to attack. They know where the big power bats are, and then you can navigate around it.
So the one reason that I would say I feel more confident in it, even though I do have some skepticism if Goldie and Arenado can get to that 30 home run mark, which is how I think they become a 90-win team and hit that ceiling. And if they don't, I think they can be like an 85-win team. The reason I have confidence in it is I disagree that this goes away. I think playing smart, fundamental, sound baseball where you manufacture runs doesn't go away. It doesn't slump. You can always do it if you have smart baseball players and guys that are actually able to bunt, like Michael Ciani can, which is a lost art in today's game. This never goes away. Power goes away when you get older, but power slumps. And when power slumps, as you're watching right now, it becomes a lot harder to score, and some teams just cannot do it. Some teams just do not play that small ball. It is either a
Cardinals last year. They didn't play it. They were incapable.
They could not do it, and it's what allowed the floor to fall from out beneath them, along with that bad pitching that they had. And that's why, do I feel more confident about the Cardinals now that they're near 500 with the way they're playing? A little bit because of that. Because this kind of style of baseball, you can always go back to this if the offense continues to slump. Or maybe the offense gets hot, but for some reason in August, guys are getting a little banged up. The offense starts to go cold. All right, you go right back to this because you never lose the ability to play small ball. And that's why I feel a little bit more confident. And that's why I think they're still a 500 team. I think they're a 80 to 85 win team. If they're going to reach the ceiling of 90, which BK thinks they can get to, it's going to be on Goldie Arenado getting to that 30 home run power for me.
So people get mad at me because I bring up these statistics all the time lately, and they're like, oh, but BK, they're making outs. Yeah, sometimes. When the Cardinals have a runner on second and nobody out, they advance about 67% of the time. That is the best rate in Major League Baseball.
So that feels pretty good.
Nobody else is above 60% in Major League Baseball so far this season. 38 of the 57 opportunities the Cardinals have had a man on second with nobody out, they advance him. That's really, really, really good. When the Cardinals have a runner on third with less than 2 outs, that runner scores about 55% of the time. It's an above league average rate. It feels like that guy never gets in, but it's because the Cardinals don't get them over enough to get them in a whole lot. But more often than your average Major League team, the Cardinals will score that runner from third with less than 2 outs. If you're looking for productive outs, which again, people get mad at me for citing this statistic, but it matters. This is advancing a runner with nobody out or driving in a base runner for the second out of the inning. The Cardinals do it more often than any team in Major League Baseball. And if you're looking at percentages of opportunities and then how often are you successful, so you're going with a rate statistic as opposed to just like, hey, they're making a bunch of outs. No, on a percentage basis, the Cardinals are second in Major League Baseball to only the Kansas City Royals. The Cardinals are doing the little things correctly offensively right now. Their problem is they don't hit for a high enough average, they do not have a high enough on-base percentage, and they are not slugging. So the problem with their offense is literally everything else. But the little things, their ability, the reason why this matters, Alex, is because their ability to manufacture runs is there. They find ways to play the small ball when it's necessary. They've got to be better at the big stuff. They've got to be better at the pew, 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 pew explosive. They need more fireworks with this offense. It's like what we've been talking about in the past with their bullpen. Like, hey, you need a ground ball? This is the bullpen for you. You need a strikeout? Well, I'll get you a ground ball. And they didn't have it. They didn't have that ability. This year, you have different players for different roles. This offense has the ability, the potential to have a little bit of everything. You've got guys in Donovan and Nootbaar who, when right, get on base at a really high clip. You should have power candidates with Gorman, Arenado, and Goldie. Now, that has not necessarily been the case this year, but when right, those three should all be able to do that for you. You also have guys that can hit for pretty good average in this lineup. Contreras should be a high average guy. You should get a pretty high average, I think, out of Mason Wynn. I think that's how he profiles as a higher average, lower on base guy. Eventually, Tommy Edman is that way as well. They've got a lot of the ingredients of an elite level offense. And I don't say that lightly because this stuff is the stuff they've been missing in previous years with the productive outs, advancing runners, all those different things. They're doing that stuff that we criticized them for and crushed them for in previous seasons. Can they get the power? I believe they can, and it's why I'm so confident in the Cardinals. I have not been this confident in the Cardinals since like week 1 of the regular season because of what we're seeing lately. The pitching is there, and everything else underlying numbers-wise for the like small ball stuff, that's there for the offense. It really comes down to, and it's all faith. It's blind faith because there is nothing that I can look at analytically that says the power is coming. Nothing. But eventually I just believe in the back of the baseball card that it will be there. Yeah. And I think maybe the weather helps. Maybe they have some kind of a rally cry that ends up working out for. I don't know what it's going to be that turns this thing around, but the offense will, in my opinion, eventually turn around. And when it does, this should be a really good baseball team.
It'll be when Jordan Walker, the savior, comes back up and, isn't broken from the Cardinals demoting him again. He's fixed and he's going to start hitting for more power.
Somebody said you guys have never crushed them for their lack of being able to manufacture runs. We absolutely did. We criticized them from high hell last year.
I think that's my role for 6 months is to crush the Cardinals every single day.
Yeah,
last year was awful.
Last year they earned that criticism. The offense was really bad at manufacturing runs. We talked about it, how they were too reliant on the home run ball. It was like home run or bust. Home run or they're not getting anybody in. This year they're not that. And that part is good. The problem is they're over-reliant now on the small ball. They have flung in the other direction, and you've got to find some kind of a middle ground. You've got to be able to get guys on more often, and you've got to be able to get them in via the home run more often than what you've been so far. All right, coming up next, we'll get into some NFL draft superlatives here on BK and Ferrario.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Soliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals back in action tonight after they took 2 of 3 from the New York Mets. As they start a 3-game road trip to Detroit. 5:40 will be first pitch tonight. Steven Matz on the mound for St. Louis. Kenta Maeda will be on the mound for Detroit. This Sports Update is brought to you by Soliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. The NFL draft has come and gone. This is really the final time that we're going to be able to talk about it in a meaningful way here on this show. So I wanted to get through some superlatives, Alex.
Okay.
In terms of like, hey, who did you think had the best draft? Who had the worst draft? Those kinds of things. So we'll go through a few of these coming off of this year's NFL draft. Let's start out with this. Alex, who is the player that was not selected in round 1? So somebody outside of the first round that you are most likely to select in a fantasy football draft this year.
Oh, that's a really good one. I don't think I have one for you. So if you guys got one off mine, go for it.
I would go with Keon Coleman. He was day 2 pick, technically.
Is that the Bills guy that they got?
It's who the Bills
okay.
took, who the Bills took, who they traded down into that round, because somebody's going to have to get the ball on that Bills team. And they traded Stephon Diggs. I like some of the pieces they still had, and we were critical of them. Hell, you heard Donnie come in here and scream on the mountaintop that they should have taken a wide receiver in round 1. I think he's going to be a guy that plays significantly into their offense. So I think he's a guy that I would target. I know it's kind of a cheap opt-out as being like the first pick in day 2, but I think there's a reason they wanted him. The reason they kept trading down was they knew he'd be on the board. I expect him to be a guy that gets a ton of targets in Buffalo from Josh Allen.
I like that one a lot. I think he's going to have a good season there. I've got 2 others. I've got one receiver, one running back that I'll give you. The running back is Trey Benson, running back out of Florida State. He was drafted early in the 3rd round by the Arizona Cardinals. He's a pure home run hitter. And they're going to have him probably as their number 2 guy behind James Conner. I would not be surprised if midway through the season, we see something kind of similar to what it was 2 years ago with Zeke and Tony Pollard in Dallas, where you've got the hard, tough, grinded out yards are going to James Conner. Midway through the season, you see more and more of Trey Benson, the backup running back, rookie guy out of Florida State. I think he could have a really nice season this year for Arizona. I'm also higher on the Cardinals, though, than both of you are. The other player, and this is purely for a PPR league, right after Keon Coleman.
That's who I was thinking.
Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
Wide receiver out of Georgia, going to the Chargers. Dude, they have nobody to throw to. Mike Williams gone, Keenan Allen gone, Josh Palmer is probably their number 1 wide receiver. Quentin Johnston stunk last year, the rookie wide receiver out of TCU. So I think Ladd McConkey's going to get a ton of targets for them in LA. He's got a real quarterback throwing him the ball too. So I think McConkey is another guy that'll end up on a bunch of teams this year.
That A.D. Mitchell was the one I thought the Buffalo Bills were going to go after. The fact that he went to the Colts, that's another one that I think could fall into that McConkey conversation, because other than Pittman, Richardson's going to have somebody to throw to. And I wonder if this guy, who's a big wide receiver, gets some targets.
I like that one a lot. All right, next thing up here as we go through some of the superlatives off of this year's NFL draft. As of today, how do you feel about the top 3 teams in the NFC?
Ooh.
Coming off of the draft, we've now seen the majority of free agency. There's typically not a whole lot of trades at this point of the year. The rosters are mostly set. As of today, going into the season, Alex, how would you rank your top 3 teams in the NFC?
So number 1 would be 49ers. I don't think anybody offsets them. I would actually put the Lions at number 2, and I would put the Eagles at number 3. I thought the Eagles had a massive draft, but I still think the Lions got better. Their roster was in place already great, and then they upgraded the 2 secondary pieces on top of the free agency. I don't know if they can out-duel 49ers, depending on if they trade these wide receivers. So, yeah, I would go Niners, Lions, Eagles.
So I agree with your top 2. I would go 49ers 1.
I think that's going to be
Lions
chalk
2.
for everybody this year.
And I think there's a clear cutoff after that. I don't know if you feel that way, but I think there's obviously tier 1 of the 2 favorites in the NFC.
I feel the way about them in the NFC now, the way that most people felt about the Chiefs and Bills going into the AFC last year.
Yeah, exactly. And then the one for me, I still think I'm going to stick with the Cowboys as number 3 for me. I know they didn't do anything significant. Zeke's back, though, boys. But I'm just trust that roster. Like, I understand there's a iffy what they're going to do at quarterback with Dak because he doesn't have a contract. They've still got weapons around Dak. Defensively, they still got pieces. I just still feel like they are the third best team in the NFC. Now, I'd hear the argument for Philly because I did love their draft. I'd hear an argument for Atlanta. Anybody else that you want to throw out in there? But I just feel like because they have most of their pieces still intact, everybody should know everybody. There isn't no, we got to learn this new offense. I'm going to trust that Dak Prescott and the Cowboys are still the third best team in the NFC.
Don't say Green Bay, man. Don't say Green Bay.
Why can't it be Green Bay?
I think they're the third best team in that division.
Who do you think is second?
Chicago.
You think the Chicago Bears will immediately be better than the Packers?
I think they have way too many weapons.
Okay.
I don't buy the end of hype with Jordan Love going into it with the exact same roster and a different running back.
A new defensive coordinator, I think, is going to be a big change for them in Green Bay this year. I think there's a chance they're really good, man. A chance they're really good. I love Jordan Love. I'm in. He convinced me last year with what he did in the playoffs, especially. Terrible end of the game against the 49ers. I get it. Can't make that pass. Can't make that mistake in that point in the game. But I think they're legit. And if they are, they've got a real shot to be the third best team immediately in the NFC this year. Now, if you wanted to go with the Bears, you could do that. If you wanted to go with T-Bone's Rams, probably could do that.
Whoa.
Didn't need that.
Sorry, man.
I don't think it's going to be one of the teams from the NFC East, though. I don't think so. I mean, think about what happened to the Eagles down the stretch last year. And now you're losing Jason Kelce, who's one of the more underrated players in the NFL in terms of what he does, just because of the position that he plays. If he was as good at wide receiver or defensive end as he is at center, we'd be talking about this like it's a huge loss for them offensively. But he's a center, so we don't really talk about him a whole lot. And now he's gone. I think the Eagles,
I do like their draft, though. Their defense got better with those two cornerbacks. I know.
Last year we loved their draft, and they had like no impact on the roster for the entirety of the season.
And they got Saquon, so watch out.
Yeah, that's going to be what does it, is a running back.
Better than their running game last year, am I right?
If you had to bet today, who do you think will win Defensive Rookie of the Year this year in the NFL? No rookie defenders taken in the first 13 picks of the draft, I believe it was. 14 picks of the draft, no defensive players. 15 was the first one with Leatu Latu going to the Colts. If you had to bet today, Alex, who do you think wins Defensive Rookie of the Year this year?
This might just be because I'm super hyped about him, but I'll take Tyrion Arnold for the Detroit Lions.
I like that.
I think you're starting QB1 for them this season, and if it's anything better than what it was last year, that is going to be a significant change. I'm not sure how tough it is to win that award as a cornerback compared to getting all of the sacks, but man, really if you're picking up interceptions and that secondary is much better now than what it was last year, you're talking about a playoff team, obviously, and I think that's going to benefit him for a Defensive Player of the Year.
I'm going to go with Dallas Turner, the edge out of Alabama that went to the Minnesota Vikings. They got two edge guys now in Minnesota. They're
He's the favorite right now.
Oh, really? I'm a little surprised by that. I thought Latu would be number one. And I think he was my second answer because the only reason that there are any questions about him were because of his neck injury. But when he's healthy on the field, watch out. The reason I'm going with him, though, is I just really trust Brian Flores. And I think he can get the best out of him. And that's why I'm going with him as the Rookie of the Year for defensive side of the ball.
I think I'm going to go Chop Robinson. Defensive end out of Miami, or out of Penn State, now plays for Miami. And the reason why is because he's a pure pass rusher. And he's going to a team that's going to play from the lead a decent amount, especially early in the season. And when you have a team like that, that's how they're constructed. You're just going to get a lot of pass rush snaps. And so he's going to go out there and he's going to put up decent numbers. They've also got a couple of other defensive ends that can help him kind of show him the ropes early on in the season. So I'll go Chop Robinson, a little bit down the board in terms of the overall odds right now. He's at 16-1 to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Your top three: Dallas Turner at 5-1, Leatu Latu at 6.5-1, and then Jared Verse, T-Bone's defensive end for the Rams, is third at 10-1 right now. Defensive end out of Florida State. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll hit the rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Now is your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash for Cardinals versus the Mets. It's the next Budweiser Bash game of the season, and it includes a limited edition Tony Womack bobblehead. Text in now. Text your number 101 at 314-399-9646. You will win a Budweiser Bash ticket. 2 tickets to next Tuesday's Budweiser Bash Cardinals versus the Mets. More details can be found at cardinals.com/promotions. The question for the day today, and texture number 101 is getting the tickets, is the following. Earlier today, I mentioned when Lance Lynn is in that bar fight at the beginning of a game, he will be drinking something after he wins that bar fight. What did I say that he would be drinking? It was the last nominee. I'll give you a little bit of a hint, Alex. It was a specific type of a beer. If you can get that correct, your texter number 101, you are getting the tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash. All right, final thing here today. We'll finish out talking about the Cardinals for just a moment or two before we get you to the fast lane coming up at 2 o'clock. Alex, the Cardinals won 2 out of 3 over the weekend. They're pitching well. They're defending well. They're mostly running the bases well. The bullpen has been fantastic. They're still not slugging. Where are you at right now in your confidence level that this team is going to find a way eventually to get above 500 and then stay above 500?
I'm right in between with this. So I'm not to the point where I'm panicking that this team is going to have a complete down spiral like last year and finish the year with 75 wins, but I still don't buy that this offense is going to be a 90 to 95 win team. I think for some aspects of it, you're starting to see just the decrease of power, and it's not going to come back like a Paul Goldschmidt, maybe like a Nolan Arenado. And I also think you're still hoping for other guys like the Nolan Gorman to be consistent. I'm going to be living in between with this team until I have some type of really strong direction one way or the other, whether they go on an absolute tear for a couple of weeks or they completely disappear. Otherwise, it's going to be up and down season.
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned just because I think that their floor can be about a 500 team. And I think if you're about a 500 team, you can make little tweaks across the season. You know, maybe Walker does come up and they figure out what's wrong with his swing down in AAA, and he comes up and starts hitting the cover off the ball, and then maybe he could be the guy that helps propel the offense forward. But I don't think they can get to 90 wins because I just don't buy that Goldie and Arenado are both going to be 30 home run guys. And I think for them to be a 90-win team, they need both those guys to slug 30 bombs. And I just, maybe Arenado can get there, but his swing looks all kinds of off. His slugging percentage isn't there. Goldie looks better, but still not hitting for a ton of power. Like, I'm just more skeptical on those two that they can get back to where they need to be to get the Cardinals to their ceiling.
Real quick question. If either of those two don't get to 30, who gets to 30 on this team?
Gorman. That's probably it.
Yeah, Gorman's your only other 30 home run hitter on this team. Contreras will get to 25, but he's not a guy that you expect to get to 35. He's on pace right now for 45 doubles, by the way. Contreras had a great start.
Contreras is awesome.
He's everything they expected him to be and then some. I, by the way, am very confident that the offense will be fine.
Of course
You're going to see 25 or more home runs from
tonight.
Arenado or Goldie in tonight's game alone.
Wow.
I think the Cardinals get a win tonight. Do you guys?
Yeah.
Steven Matt's on.
Oh, no, you're losing tonight.
I think they win tonight. I think they win tomorrow. We know Game 3, they're ineligible to win, so that's the way that it's going to go.
Way to go.
For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.